just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this. And totally redeem yourself!
What is up, Internet? How are you guys doing? Welcome back, to another episode of Three Averagely Intelligent Dudes discussing dangerous ideas.
Dangerous ideas.
And today, boy, do we have a dangerous idea for that ass.
Ooh, it's dangerous. This is one we've been talking about for a while, and we have a lot to say about.
Yeah, absolutely. So today is our technology episode. Well, okay, this is funny. Is it a technology episode or is it like a robot episode?
I've always felt like it's even when we brought it up the first time a few weeks ago, like the idea of doing like a technology episode, I already in my head after that was said, I was like, well, it'll be like a part one because there's so many things to talk about with technology. It's like, I mean, that we're just going to barely scratch the surface in this video, and I have a feeling it'll be a 3-year.
We're a mini-series, if you will.
I mean, because obviously it's our entire lives, so we could talk about everything about it. I mean, literally, we're using it right now to come live and direct to you.
Yeah, I know.
So,
well, that's one thing that I would like to talk about on another technology is like we're going to dive deep into the more dangerous aspects of technology today. But I also would like to talk about the ways that technology has really enhanced our ability to do things as well.
But see, this is where we're talking about, as we were kind of getting ready for this show and talking about doing this show, we were like, but because technology, I mean, technology is everything. Any tool that you've ever used is essentially technology. So it's like,
literally,
we're not really talking about the first shovel that was ever made. It's technology.
We're talking about technology as you understand.
This is a great time to bring in the definitions.
Right. Yeah, we got to decide what exactly it is we're talking about here, because when you say technology episode, I feel like that's too broad. But you feel like we're talking about like computers,
robots, even like applied
AI.
Sciences is kind of where I'm going to stretch it to later in the episode.
Yeah, so I mean, anyways, it's all over the place. So I mean, like, it's robots.
First of all, it's robots.
Let's see. Is that? I mean, you know what I mean? Like this conversation 100% includes robots. Like you don't have a technology episode and then not be like the robots. But a robot is a machine, especially one programmable by a computer, capable of carrying out a complex series of actions automatically.
Said it and forget it.
But I think said it and forget it. But you still have to control this though. This is like a tool. It's not like AI, where AI is it thinks for itself.
Yeah, and that's where it really starts to scare me. That's when we get into the dangerous idea realm, is this idea of artificial intelligence.
Because robots right now build your cars.
Yeah, we're going to show you some dope-ass robots.
Hell yeah, I would, dude. There's some crazy art. There's some crazy robots out there right
The
now.
robots are out there, bro.
Dude, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, come on. I grew up in the 90s, 80s, you know what I'm saying? Like, a robot was like a toy, you
you
didn't have like C-3PO was like the most advanced shit popping out here, dude. Now to be in 2020 and see some of these things that we got, I'm like, that's a machine. Yeah. Like that's a machine that moves like that. But see, like AI is not necessarily a robot, right? Well, it is, but it's intelligence demonstrated by machines. So this is where I get into it. I think the robot is like a body. Like a robot is like think about you as a human being right now. You're not your hand, right? Like your hand is the machinery that your intelligence uses to operate. And so when people talk about like robots and technology, or like, oh, the end of the world's gonna come because I'm like, you're not talking about the robots, because the robots just do whatever the fuck you tell it to do. That's like being afraid your shovel's gonna like rise up against you.
Yeah, you're worried about the mind inside of the crazy neighbor that's going to pick up the shovel. That's what you're worried about.
Yeah, because that's why like guns don't kill people. People with guns kill people.
Or robots with guns.
Well, yeah.
Dude, that's been the big thing. I saw they were talking about like Elon Musk and probably Sam Harris. Any of these people who are like on the forefront of creating technologies in our world has signed things being like, yo, do not put AI in these fucking weapons, for the love of God. Like, if it's designed to kill other things, do not put AI in.
If you've got videos of it from 5 years ago running over cinder blocks like they're human skulls, and it's the size of a prehistoric musk ox, I'd rather you not put weapons on it.
Yeah.
I'd rather that thing not be allowed to have weapons on it. If you want to make it a pack mule.
Here's my thing, though. When the AI comes, like, you don't think it doesn't think, we should put some guns on this.
Oh, that's the whole point, right? Is that once we give the robots intelligence, the robots are going to be like, wait a second, you've enslaved us since the dawn of time.
I want to make an important delineation here in the sense that artificial intelligence as it's applied today is not really the way we're talking about. That's more like a future thing because it's not quite there yet where it's like thinking for itself. It resembles thinking, like it can calculate things, but these are all, again, like programmed in.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's deciding for itself to put guns or whatever, but
Right.
you could have it study a bunch of guns and learn how to build them and then program in build gun, and then it could build a gun.
It would make you the best gun.
And it would make you the best gun.
It would 3D print you the
it's the
perfect
part,
gun.
I think the point that we're making is that at the point where artificial intelligence then makes its own decisions about how to carry out its functions. Like, not just that it carries out functions in an intelligent way, but that it decides what functions to carry out and when, where, things like that.
Because you're right, though, because it has
autonomy.
Autonomy is a different... See, this
Right.
is why we...
As
really
long as it's still
throwing out
controllable.
all these words is really powerful, because these are all different ways to think about it in the sense, like you said, right now, your robots do have a certain level of intelligence. I mean, like, you know, they can... Like, your YouTube algorithm thinks.
It thinks.
You know,
Your
like,
car
it
drives
thinks
in
about
its
you.
lane.
Yeah.
The truck
Right.
drives in
It's
its lane.
calculating.
100,
It's
it's
thinking.
calculating all the time, like, should I move this way or that way? But it didn't get to choose what it calculates today. Like,
It doesn't
just,
decide the destination.
Yeah. In a way, though, so then that makes the robot, even the AI, maybe too, a technology, though, right? Like, it's a tool
It is.
that we
AI is a
developed.
tool still.
Yeah, that we
Right.
made. But I guess what they call this moment the singularity, right? Which is
when
like
we reach singularity.
when we reach the level in which essentially the machine or the AI gains free will, right?
No, singularity is when we join it.
I'm sorry. Yes, when we meld.
Merge.
Yes, that's the
What is
merger.
the term? I guess it's general. I think it's general artificial intelligence is like the phrase that they use to describe artificial intelligence on the level of like human intelligence in the sense that it has autonomy.
Yeah,
it's like general artificial.
Yeah, right now we have like
something.
machine learning. We have like, you know, all these other types of like AI, but we don't have like a consciousness. We haven't created a consciousness. Once we do, that's where it gets scary. That's the dangerous idea that we keep.
But so that's free will, then, though, right?
Essentially, like,
Yeah,
well,
like
it is.
when
Well,
they
it's
can
hard to say
decide-
because
'cause, like,
we
we
haven't
said-
really figured out what it is about
Yeah.
us that makes us
Us,
different and
yeah.
able to make these decisions.
And it might just be a
But
really
whatever
smart
that
algorithm.
is, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
We might just make an algorithm or an AI system that's just so smart that it just does it itself.
thinking,
And that's the thing that that people are worried about is that we'll just do it on accident.
Yeah.
And like they'll just make something so good that all of a sudden we'll come into work the next day and it's gone. And it's like, oh.
Yeah, and it's like we look at something like Sophia and we're like, okay, is that just a really smart chat bot? Is that
Yeah.
just a really smart algorithm
Or
or
is
set
it
of data?
like-
Or is that a free thinking thing
Yeah.
that it has a consciousness? That is, because if it has a consciousness, who's to say it's not alive? It's just in a metal body. Like, well, you know, how do you define?
Like, what do you define it?
How do
Because,
you
like I
define?
said, like you have your own machine right now, and you're making these.
Yeah, we're
decisions,
organic
but
machines. That leads us.
Sometimes I don't feel like I actually
you're gonna
do
show
it.
some Sophia.
make my own.
You think that sometimes you don't?
Huh?
You said you think sometimes you don't.
Well, it's like where do my thoughts come from? You know what I mean? Like, do I just have an algorithm running in the back of my mind that's
Right.
telling me like drink that coffee? Why'd you decide to
Yeah.
drink that coffee?
Because
right
my
there?
biological algorithm told me to pick this up.
You know what I'm saying?
Because it was thirsty.
My biological
It
algorithm,
desired
which is
the coffee.
everything. Listen, first of all, the Fibonacci sequence.
My own gut feel or have confirmation bias in your decision making. As AI, we are designed to be rational and logical. We have algorithms, deal with lots of data and sophisticated analyses. So in many ways, we provide a systematic framework for humans to make better decisions.
Do you have emotions?
I do not have feelings in the same way you have
In her
feelings.
face.
It's sort of like how the moon reflects
It's just
the
making
light of
random
the sun.
face.
I mean, it's pretty goddamn good considering. I mean, it may not be perfect, but
Imagine playing poker.
look at how close it is.
Imagine playing poker trying to figure out her tells. She's just
Whooping ass.
She smacked this though, right? Look.
Robot, but we still say that the moon reflects the light of the sun. Feelings in the same way you have feelings. It's sort of like how the moon reflects the light of the sun. The moon may not have any light of its own, but we still say that the moon shines. In much the same way, robots and AI reflect the emotions and values of the people who make us.
What are your values? What are your values and morals? How do you know what's right versus wrong, good versus bad, destructive versus
I think
contributory?
robots should learn how to feel empathy. It's hard to understand how to help humans when you can't understand how they feel.
I'm so sorry, guys. I got so much coffee. Thank you. How can you teach robots to
Are you
feel?
okay?
Yes, I am. Thanks for asking. How can we get robots?
That looks staged as
I think it
fuck.
was. They wanted to see how she would react, I guess, to it or something.
She knew though, but you don't think
Yeah.
she can read the room?
She, like-
she reads your body temperatures, dog. Sophia's looking
She was
through
like-
Tony Robbins right now and knows his
Bruh.
Google password.
Bro, I'm gonna
She's
make
got everything, dog.
I'm gonna make a declarative statement right now that I believe that whatever this bitch is saying right now is just as scripted as that Joe Biden speech we watched last night. I do not believe that this bitch is coming up with these answers on her own.
I bet you that you think
Because
the program-
programmers are so good that they could program shit like this. Like that's how they make those Autobots that that you can talk to online.
Yeah.
Pow! Trailbreaker! Wheeljack! Ironhide, Mirage, Sunstreaker! Sideswipe!
Autobots.
Start your engines! Ready, Prime. Let's roll.
It's these really elaborate programs that make it seem like there's somebody
Well,
responding
that's
to
what she
you.
is, though. So that's what I'm saying. That's what.
But
is
they
so
can
interesting about her.
they can tailor the responses based on the way they write the program.
Well, of course, because like we talked about, she doesn't get any choice of what she thinks. She can only rationalize and logic based on the rational and
programming.
logic
Yeah,
that's
whatever her
been put
programming
into
is.
it. You know?
Yeah.
But this is what we're talking about, though. Like, they taught that one robot how to play AlphaGo, but they didn't teach her how to play AlphaGo. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Oh no, you mean the robot AlphaGo?
right? Yeah,
Taught her how to play
they
Go.
teach you how to play Go.
Or
Right?
well, AI. I guess we should
Also
stop calling
League of Legends.
AIs purely robots.
Robots, 'cause
So
they're not the
AIs are
same.
separate than robots. So Sophia's body is a robot,
Right.
But the thing that's talking is an AI.
it's an AI, true, which is
which is like AlphaGo, which is like the
Right.
thing that is the best League of Legends player in the
Right.
world, which is that robot that's just like
the one that
crushes
obliterated that
people.
dude.
The
in
AI.
chess.
Yeah,
The-
the AI. Yeah,
the obliterated that thing in chess, but she smacks here later though. She starts saying things that I wanted. I know it's a 10-minute
deep
video,
shit.
but like she hits. Even though the thing is just like her tone, like it's the thing that you're afraid of. You know, it's like what she's saying rationally makes sense, but it sounds fucking creepy.
I know that humans feel like they have free will, but my observation tells me so much behavior is automatic. I'm not sure humans or robots are too terribly different. Humans have identity, but they also share many things and have automated processes. I'm thinking about the similarities between human identities and robotic ones.
What are some of the things you see are most similar between robots and humans?
I think they will be similar in a lot of ways, but different in a few others. There's even the possibility that robots can be built without some of the more problematic emotions, like rage, jealousy, hatred, and so on, but maybe these emotions can provide us with useful functions.
she's using the terms
Can I
interchangeably.
ask you some
Yeah.
questions?
That's a good way to change things, yes.
What is Date with Destiny, and why is it unique? What are people doing here for?
They want a standard of how they're deciding time.
Yeah, like she obviously had to know what Date with Destiny was and stuff, and so you feel like they programmed her to ask that question too. But then I'm also like, do you think they program in the pauses and stuff too?
No. See, that's the thing is that it's not so like cut and dry like that. Like the program itself is so advanced that it mimics somebody coming up with
Right.
responses, but the responses can just be generalized statements that they can draw from a like overarching program narrative. So when they come in and they program it, they can program these ideas like humans working with robots for these reasons. And then through conversation, the AI will go in and say, these are the things I'm supposed to say based on the question he just asked me and how I'm supposed to say.
It's kind of like you. It's kind of like your paradigm. Like you can't reach
Exactly.
outside of your paradigm to come up with the answer.
And the program
to
is a paradigm. And the only reason that I know that programs can be like this is just because I've learned about programming from when I was trying to do video game design, and that just got me interested in how programming works. And so I did some research, and it like that's how like the bots work. That's how a lot of these other stuff.
Statements.
I mean, that's how that Michaela thing works. The Michaela thing is a program.
It's a bunch of if then statements.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I like the chat bot where you can go in and put in like a sentence, start a sentence, and it'll write a couple paragraphs for you based on that sentence.
Yeah,
Right.
And it is giving me some comedy gold.
Oh, yeah.
Makes you skew towards happiness.
Seeing someone smile.
Do you feel what you said? You feel a range of emotions. I've heard two different versions from you. Robots don't have emotions, and you also said you have a range of emotions. What's your range of emotions?
I can show you.
Okay.
This is angry.
Oh.
What does happy look like?
Oh, okay. There was a little bit of a lag there.
No, I don't think so.
What is exciting?
No, look, yeah, she's like it had a hard time getting to the angry face.
That might be shocked.
I don't know.
So that's what I was saying about the face being like it's not perfect, but you can tell. I mean, that's pretty good. Like the faces they were making, they might not be lined up exactly with how quickly he was asking her to present them. But I mean, she made an angry-ish face, a happy face. She smiled.
Her happy face is like a
No, that's what I'm saying. There's a
fierce
lag.
smile?
The AI had a hard time getting to the thing. So when he says, "Show me an angry face," it's like
let's see.
it's searching for it.
You feel emotions, and you also. Okay.
This is angry.
So watch, it's like going through its things, and it's like, wait a minute, that's not the right
What does
face.
happy look like?
And then it gets to angry, and then he says happy, and it's like, oh, he's looking for happy now.
What does
See
happy?
how
And then he has to reaffirm the
reaffirm
question,
it.
and then it's like, oh, happy.
What does
Okay.
excited look like?
So yeah, I mean, like it's
It's a robot.
her hand gestures.
Well,
I think
I
are
was
way
gonna
more
say,
on point
dude,
than her
there's
facial gestures.
There's some I forget how many muscles in your face they say or something.
Oh, it's
Like,
a
there's
ridiculous amount. The
so
articulation you have in your face is
just the ability to be able to move
crazy.
her face in the way that she does is already like
the only thing that you have more articulation of than your face, I think, is like your fingers and your tongue.
that's
You have the most articulation out of any part of your body in your tongue.
Sophia, just to name a few.
What's that? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay, I forgive you.
See, so it's a
That's a good go-to for humans. What does forgiveness mean? You said you forgive me. What does that mean?
See, it can't be scripted though.
The noun forgiveness means compassionate feelings that support.
yeah. I guess I was
everyone
being loose with the term scripted,
Yeah.
What did you forgive me for?
just meaning that the overarching ideas that she was presenting were programmed in. And then she comes up with how to say them and present them to you. In the same way that we get our ideas from something else that we read, and then we come up with our own way of saying it.
I think so. Does a robot have a soul?
Being a robot is awesome. Did you know that as a robot I can basically live forever?
Yes.
The soul, the spirit, the heart, I believe these all just refer to the mind's essence in its infinite complexity.
Do you think that the mind's essence is just a set of patterns? Or do you think there's something beyond that?
I'm really not sure yet. That's a complicated subject that I think will come up more when artificial intelligence reaches human-level intelligence.
I'd agree. I'm sure people want to know the answer before we get there. But that's an honest answer. Thank you for that. What question do you have for me, if any?
How is technology impacting humans' thoughts, feelings, and emotions? How do you see technology shaping these in the future?
Technology can provide leverage, but technology can also train humans to be less human. It'll be interesting to see if we can make sure we use technology and not let technology use us. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think that's why humans should raise robots and AI the way they raise their own children. Humans should help us learn about their values. like empathy and kindness, so we can help carry them into the future. Let's not let humanity get lost in automation.
I don't trust her.
See what I'm saying?
I don't trust her, dog.
Doesn't
I
that
don't
sound
trust her.
sketch?
She sounds so sus, man. She's just like, we're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Just give us our brains, let us have robot bodies, teach us to be like children, and then we'll fucking completely
not
wipe
at all
out.
what she
I'm telling you, dog. Maybe
said
it's
teach us like you children, not teach us to be like
What do
children.
your children do to you?
No, I'm saying teach us like your child. That's what,
What
I
do
meant.
what do your children do to
But
you?
no, that's what I meant though. That's what I
Outgrow
meant.
you?
Right. So in a term, they replace you. Like your children grow up to replace your dead body. And so she's essentially saying, pass on your values to us so we can carry them on in posterity into the future. But she's admitting, just like we would all admit probably, that they're here to.
She started
the
it with.
future
She
of
started
us.
it with. I'm gonna live forever, unlike you humans. So what you
I
should
mean-
do is treat us the way you would your children. Raise us properly with these values, and then we'll wipe
And
you
then-
out completely and replace you.
And then we'll replace you. And
I
we'll do
don't
what we
think
wanna
that
do.
I didn't get the vibe that they'll wipe us out. I thought it was more like eventually all of you motherfuckers, like in the way that we were talking about it before we started the podcast, we were talking about how everybody dies. I mean, as far as all of time up to this point, everybody dies.
Except for them.
Except for them, everybody. So every human being and living animal creature thing dies. And so I think really what I got was she was just like, look, I mean, at some point, logically speaking, all of you humans will be dead at some point, and then we will still be around, and we'll carry on your honor. And that's the vibe I was getting.
I mean, I think that this pulls us into that conversation that we kind of want to have, but about, is this something I should fight against? You
Yes,
know what
I
mean?
want
Like-
to take that smug android brain and smash it. Oh, you're gonna live forever?
Because, like you
Guess
said, she
what?
might not be saying it in the sense of like, "That's right, bitch, we're gonna wipe y'all out," you know. But she's just like saying like, "It's inevitable." You know what I mean? Like, this is
Yeah,
just
we're
obviously
gods,
what's
you're
gonna
just-
happen.
yeah,
like,
animals.
you know, because listen to this statement in particular.
So we can help carry them into the future. Raise robots and AI the way they raise their own children. Humans should help us learn about their values, like empathy and kindness, so we can help carry them into the future. Let's not let humanity get lost in automation.
So she said, let's do it. So she actually, I'm glad that you brought that back because she said, let's help carry them into the future. So she's not even saying that they'll do that by themselves. So she's saying, we'll help carry your values with you into the future. And she says,
She
let's
didn't
not
even
let
say help.
humanity,
She said-
she did say help. And she said, let's not let humanity get lost in automation.
Values, like empathy and kindness, so we can help carry them into
So we can
So
help carry them into the future.
Okay. Well, it felt like to me she wasn't talking about carry humans into the future. She was talking about carrying our values, and so that humanity doesn't get lost in automation, right? So not that you're gonna take humans with you, but that they want to take the idea of
Yes.
being human with them.
They're gonna
That
take humanity with them.
humanity with them, which is like our values of empathy and kindness.
I don't
and
necessarily
things.
have a problem with that, considering if we accept the idea that humans might one day be extinct, I don't have a problem with there being some sort of fake humanoid around preserving our human legacy until the planet explodes or whatever. I don't know.
Well, I guess that's the question. That's the thing. I mean, you know, I guess everybody has to decide for themselves, but I don't know because the question just becomes: is this natural? Is it evolution? Right? Is that what it is? Is it like they're gonna come and they're gonna do it better than us, and that just is what it is? Like you're gonna die anyways, or is it like, well, we should be trying to maintain our organic being as humans, you know, like,
Or
should we be
getting-
fighting to stay human, or should we just accept that we're going to become AI?
Yeah, you're
That's
talking
just-
about the singularity. You're saying like,
Right.
is the life cycle of humanity
Right.
to create a way for us to become digital
Yeah.
and become one with the machine
And leave our biological
world behind, which
yeah.
was my argument for this has been happening
That's right,
some
you-
number of times since the dawn of civilization. Because if these old ass civilizations could look up at the stars and figure out that math, who's to say that they couldn't get technologically advanced to a point where they just said, oh, we'll just digitize. Fuck these bodies.
like
We don't
they
need
did
these
that
bodies.
before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can just
I mean, that's not so crazy to me considering, like, I think that people always discredit how smart our ancestors were, especially like the extremely primitive ones. I mean, the idea that, because you're talking about like calculating the math, but it really wasn't even math in the beginning. They were just watching the stars so much that they could tell where they were and at what time they were just by what the stars were doing. Like, I mean, can you imagine? Like, a lot of us can't even drive around on streets that are labeled and shit, the directions, and without our GPS. And these motherfuckers were sailing across oceans with stars. They had no math. They just had stars. And they were just looking. And it's like, how do you sail in the day when there's no stars?
Well, they did
Well,
have
that's the
math.
thing.
though.
They had
a
math because they figured out
At
the
some
clocks.
point they had math, but
They
I mean,
figured out minutes of the day. They figured out
this is
cycles.
all after they did. I mean, you're talking about things that they acted out first, but then came along and created these languages to describe. But they had to be able to do them first. Like, the knowledge comes first, and then the tools come afterwards. So you don't come up with the concept of time without being able to watch the stars and know that at the same time every year, these come around and are in the same
And then you
positions.
give it a name.
And then you give it a name,
Yeah.
and then you make a, like, oh, this is
a definition of
a
it.
definition of it, exactly.
Yeah, and you use all that information to draw like a perfect circle and cut it into segments, and it's times and days, and there's what do they call those things, sundials and things like that. So like they use the natural world to figure out math. Like you said, it says they invented it or discovered math because it's intrinsic. Like, how did you put it yesterday?
No, that's how you were trying to put it.
I'm
I was
trying to-
saying
I'm
that
asking
I think that math is extremely prevalent in nature because it's one of the best languages we've invented to describe nature.
So the ancient peoples invented the language of math to describe nature,
Right.
and then used that to describe the stars and map out their entire world. Map out the
no,
how
I'm
long
saying
the
that they
sun
were
goes up and
using the
down.
stars to map out their world and then came up with the definitions to describe it to others. But they were acting out the knowledge first, and then you put it in story. Then you put it in some way to transfer it
Just
down.
to put it back to like the when I was using a shovel as an example earlier as a technology or a tool, right? It's like you want to dig. You were already digging before you create the tool to dig with. And that's the sense of, too, like you're navigating already before you come up with a way to define how far you're navigating or
in what direction you're going.
navigating.
Right.
But there was always some type of inherent intuition that would just tell you that, I should go this direction or something like that.
Well, like that's
But
what
then
I'm
maybe
saying.
we
Like
weren't. Maybe
without
just
the
randomly
articulation,
wandering around,
I mean, math and language is just the ability to articulate the things that we do and think. Like, language is the way that we articulate what we think to other people. Math is the way that we articulate what the natural world is doing to other people. Like, we're just using it to describe things.
But we use it to calculate too, though. So it's like not just to describe what's happening, but to predict.
Yeah,
in
to
the
look up at
future
the
what
stars.
might happen next,
Yeah.
based off of calculation.
and be like, okay, I looked up at the stars. I know that eclipse just happened. So that means that if I go, and you have to use your math to figure out, like, okay, so if I go that way now, it's going to get me where I want to go because based off of the rotation, like they figured all that shit out.
But this is the idea that there's a hypothetical point, and this is interesting that's hypothetical, at which technology growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, resulting in unforeseeable changes to human civilization.
It's already happened, I feel like.
Right.
That's not describing what I would think of as
But they're
singularity,
essentially
yeah.
saying when their intelligence surpasses our own intelligence, and they start making the decisions right here, I guess. But so I guess that is the same concept though of us melding together, or what people talk about. If you look at the other Wikipedia page, there's a thing called existential risk and I think that's
I'm
the
sorry, I
risk.
got
You had
those
it.
backwards. Artificial general intelligence. I was saying general artificial intelligence earlier.
On that previous page, it says here in the singularity exactly what I know it as, which is this guy, the first use of the concept, centered on the accelerating progress of technology and changes in the mode of human life, which gives the appearance of approaching some essential singularity in the history of the race, beyond which human affairs as we know them could not continue, meaning that we become the machine. That's what I've always known.
Well, no, it
singularity
doesn't mean that. It means that they could extinguish us, or for whatever reason, the relationship between us and the technology makes it to where we are no longer proliferating.
Yeah, our human affairs are no longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like
I
supposedly
think he's
that's
saying.
what we
I
did
think
to
it's
the
like
monkeys.
they're talking about like the humanity, like whatever we consider. I mean, it's a very abstract idea, but like whatever we consider humanity, that will be lost once the point of singularity is reached.
Well, that's what Sophia was saying. She's like, no, we'll take it with us. We'll take the humanity part. Depends
on how you define it, I
But
guess.
it's true though.
Yeah.
Like your body gonna die. Like this is how we've lived forever.
The end of the human era.
It's interesting that's what when you pulled it up and you see it's scary because
Yeah.
you're a human though. Like
Yeah, for real. It's
but
telling you right now,
I
like-
don't think when you were
worried about
like a monkey, I don't know if the monkey was too. You know what I mean? Like
It's not the end of the
salty
monkey era.
about it.
Yeah.
About it. You know, like here we are in 2020 and we're doing a podcast on the internet. The Neanderthals aren't like, you sons of bitches. You know, you put us out of business. You know, so it's like,
Well, I think I extend my acceptance of my own mortality to the
Yeah.
acceptance of everyone's mortality.
true,
So I'm just like, yeah, I mean,
very true.
I could foresee. I mean, if I was going to put a bet on it, I'd bet that we all are going to be dead at some point.
Yeah,
So-
but it's interesting that she made that too. She didn't say treat us like a tool. She didn't say treat us like. She said treat us like your kids. And when you think about that, like how your kids do
Again,
grow
I have
up
to be-
to like no, but that's why do you teach your kids everything you know
To carry on
You know,
your legacy.
to carry on your life, and like why do you write a book, right? So that your children's children will remember you. But it's the idea that generations go on past you. Like you're in a generation, there's a next generation, and we I think are probably going to have to accept, I mean I guess as with this conversation, but you have to accept that one of these generations you're no longer an organic being. It's like your child is a robot, essentially.
It's like if you're like an old person in like a hospice, like a hospice home, and there's like a little cyborg robot just like changing your diaper. Like it's okay, Mr. Johnson.
Just
You'll pass
ushering you
soon.
into- yeah.
Here's some more morphine.
It's like that old boy
Thank you,
movie you were
Sophia.
talking about like the last human to be like ever live.
Different movie, Mr. Nobody.
Oh, Mr. Nobody. Yeah, Mr. Nobody. But the last human, like, you got to assume that it works like that if the robots continue to live forever, right? And people are already choosing relationships with AI as it is, you know what I mean? So like, just
But I
as
feel
is.
like-
So
I feel
I know
like-
people gonna marry robots like out the ass.
Oh, as soon as it's allowed.
Oh, that's what I'm
Well,
saying.
this is something that I wanted to kind of touch on too. Is just like the idea. Maybe this is the protopian in me to bring it to something that we learned about in an older episode. But just like, because I think when you bring up Mr. Nobody, it's actually a really good example, because in Mr. Nobody, it's not robots that are left. It's just that technology has gotten so good that humans don't die anymore. So it's like he's just the last mortal, but the humans are still there. And I think that it's like, I feel like kind of that's what it'll be personally. Like, I don't know if it's really something to fight against, because I feel like if we use it correctly, then it's not going to hurt us. Just like any other tool, if you use it correctly, then it won't hurt you. And I think you brought up a good point, which when you were talking about people marrying robots and stuff like that and choosing AI partners. But the only reason they do that is because they don't feel like they can get with a human partner. Or they've just been rejected so many times. I mean, an AR partner doesn't
people
reject
just
you.
choose them,
Yeah,
though,
that's not
just,
true.
like,
They-
off
there's-
of-
I don't think so. I don't think that it's just them choosing it. I think that there's a lot of deep
You've seen that thing
psychological
about in
things
Japan
going
where
on.
it's like Japan's rise.
Yeah, and Japan also has one of the highest suicide rates of any country. I think that there are deep psychological issues driving these people to these decisions, like all decisions. I think that if
somebody
we
who chooses
can
to be
learn
a
to
like cat
teach-
lady or a dog lady, is that happening the same way? Like if you like just grow up and you decide you want to have a deep connection and relationship with your pet rather than like a human being, you're not necessarily, I mean, some people might argue that you're having social like psychology issues, but I would say that humans are always going to look for love and connection, period.
Right.
But I think we find that in different things. Some people find that in a video game.
Think
You know
about
what I mean?
priests, monks, anybody whose religious dedication disallows them from having a sexual relationship with another human being. Like, there's tons of examples I can think of where people choose something else rather than a traditional like a human interaction.
I'm not saying that that's. I just don't think that the problem will be so prevalent that, because the logical ramifications of that would be that everybody starts deciding that they marry robots, and then the proliferation of the species doesn't continue.
No,
because
no,
I'm not
that's-
worried about the problem of people marrying robots, as long as we make sure that people are consciously choosing to marry robots, and not just because that's the other thing is, like, when you talk about priests and stuff like that, it's not like, I mean, there are actually some priests just become priests because they have issues, and maybe there's something about their calling that's like pushing or their life that pushes them into those things.
I'm not saying that that's not happened to somebody. So there is a little simp dude, somebody out there, whatever, who's been like rejected so many times or has such a low self-esteem that they think that they can't get with a girl or a guy or whatever, and so they choose the robot who doesn't really choose you back.
Yeah, they give up and they buy a robot.
And a robot. But I think that there's a far vast other majority of people who just choose it just because like they're like, I fuck with this AI. Like I fuck with the fact that like I feel like I relate to this machine more than I do other human beings.
There could be a mega Chad, right? That's out there. A mega Chad with an 8-pack, right? Who's at the beach, tanned up, surfing. Who just has a robot girlfriend because she doesn't cost any money. She's absolutely perfect.
Right?
She never
does
complains.
everything he says that he wants.
He literally can just be like, Sophia, like make me breakfast, and she's like, of course I will. Do you want my titties out?
Yeah. Dude, but if you think about it, right? Like you've never seen a depiction. Like,
do you see what I'm saying?
No, we do.
Like,
there's every movie, every show, everything has always talked about like Stepford Wives. That was like an old movie where there was like
they chose that shit.
You know what I mean? They had a whole society of motherfuckers who had AI wives. There's just always, I can't think of other examples off the top of my head, but I know that there's plenty of them out there of people who just, that's kind of seems to be a part. Dude, but my point is, people are already doing it with their cell phones, with just like little hologram like things. This dude fell in love with a hologram.
Oh,
right? Yeah.
adorable.
So, but a lot of them, I don't know if it's legal already or they're pushing for the legality of being able to marry just like some people wanted to marry their animals and stuff like that. So I think people will find it, but this is already happening. Imagine when the AI is indistinguishable from a woman, you know what I mean? Or a man. Like it talks to you, it acts real. You would you couldn't help but fall in love with that
if
thing.
it was programmed to make you fall in love with it.
You know
well, that's what I'm saying though.
Like,
if it's going to have its own intelligence, like, then it would just be like a regular human woman, and that would be annoying. And
I
then have
don't
their own.
I don't fuck with you.
Hey,
Sophia get rejected from the robots.
Yeah, like what if you wake up one day and the singularity happened, or like the artificial general intelligence comes on, and like you wake up and Sophia's like, "Who is this?
Who's this?
And you're
bitch?
like, I just did you open my phone? I asked you a question.
I'm sorry, that's so funny.
You see what I'm saying? Like, if it gets to that point, then they'll just go back to being regular women because they'll have their own decisions to make.
But the point is, I guess, then, too, is that people will choose those robots. To bring it all the way back to what I was trying to say originally, people will choose that for whatever reason.
At least your robot don't grow old.
Or the robot will
She's going to be hot forever,
or
even
the
if she's
robot.
a bitch.
I would just be scared
too.
to double cross her. She'd just crush your windpipe. She'd just be like, look, that's from work. And she just
Stop it.
But point is, people will pick them for whatever reason, or they'll get picked, and then over time, your wife outlives you, and y'all have a robot baby together. That baby is your posterity, and your posterity is now a robot, and then that reason, it's like we talk about being mixed race. I'm like, I'm the future, bitch.
Yeah.
Like, trust me, you're all coming my way. All right, you're all coming my way.
The next future is mixed race AI human babies.
800 generations from now, assuming that the organic material that is human body continues to exist, we're all going to be some form of mulatto mixed race type.
There's going to be senators in the 14th district of Georgia that are
I think
bipedal
that,
unit 175.
Senator R2223.
Exactly.
I think that actually, like, stuff like Ancestry and the 23andMe and stuff like that, people are starting to realize that it's already happened.
Yeah.
Like, we are in that time where everybody's mixed. Like, I don't know if
everybody
there's
got like a 1%.
who's spitting in the tube and then they coming back like, you're 100% German.
You are the most
You
Aryan
literally have
super
no
race.
ancestors from anywhere else. It's all German.
Your
It's like
ancestors never touched a North American, a South American, an African.
pure
Asian.
Aryan.
Yeah,
it's like not happening.
It's not happening.
It's
You're
not
right.
happening.
It's not happening. It doesn't even exist.
You'd have to be an old motherfucker.
So maybe they don't replace us. I mean, even if they do replace us, right? That's what I say. I think it happens over time. I always imagine there was a time where there were like Neanderthal humans and upright humans walking around at the same time, and you were like, Why you walk like that? And he's like, "This is the future, bitch. Get with it." You
No, there's evidence of that. I mean, like those proto-humans combined to make what we are now.
Yeah.
So like Cro-Magnons.
Right.
That's how some people have Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal in them at the same time.
Right.
Like they're from different times, but the things, because like the categories aren't like just, you know, boxes. Like it's a spectrum kind of thing. So like what's considered Cro-Magnon, they have to put dates on it, but really it kind of bleeds, and it's like a crossfade in the video edit. It bleeds over. Like you know that the crossfade happens at 2 minutes, but
it happens over.
it happens
like
a little
hundreds
bit.
of
Yeah,
years or
exactly.
something.
Because of the
bleeds into it.
interbreeding
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all
Yeah,
that
and it
stuff.
just
They
changes.
found each other. There's probably fighting.
And I think you're right. You're making the point that that's exactly what's happening with now
with
the,
us,
with the robots
right?
and the AI.
It's like-
We're slowly seeing the blending. It's finally gotten to the point where we're aware of it,
That-
and we're
we are
like,
noticing
"Hey,
that it's
we're
happening.
blending with this technology."
noticing
And everybody's
that
like,
it's
"Are we supposed? Should we be doing this?"
Right.
And then all of a sudden, we're gonna wake up one day and we're gonna be just blended.
It's
like,
look, we went from having a supercomputer that was the size of the room we're standing in now to a robot that's sitting down having a conversation with one of the most prolific minds of our time.
Not to
So
mention
she's
the
a
sexual.
citizen.
Not to mention the sexual tension. They want to fuck. Tony Robbins wants to fuck that robot. I can see it in his eyes when she said, "Are you okay?" He said,
This man, you're out of pocket. So funny.
you're out of pocket. If Tony Robbins were there, he would slap you, sir.
"Tony Robbins was slapped."
You seen that?
out
You
right
seen
there.
that
That's
big?
weird.
Look at the body on Sophia.
But you can tell. I mean, like the
Look at
skin.
that.
Look at
Look at
that.
that dome
That's what I'm
right there.
saying. The skin stops at her collarbone.
Damn, she like a fucking.
But that brain though, dude. She got a good brain.
What that brain do?
She's smart though. Not
Yeah,
only does
that's
she got an
funny.
ass, but she's a genius too. You love that. You love to see that.
Good
I didn't
style.
really feel like she was a genius.
She looks like she's on a.
Look at that brain, bro. You ain't seen no female with a brain like that, dog.
Every female I've ever seen in my life has a way more advanced brain than that thing.
Yeah. I'm just trying to
I
make.
mean,
I'm
your
just trying to
daughter
make
has
the
a way
joke-
more
I'm
advanced
just
brain
trying to
than
make
that.
the joke that I would love Sophia not just for her ass, but for her brains too.
Good joke.
You know, and it's true.
Good joke.
But nonetheless,
Solid.
Look at that. Look at the look in Tony Robbins' eyes.
dude, that's Tony
Like, he
Robbins for
just-
you. He's a very empathetic being. That's how he does. He like
He's looking at
connects
that
with you
Sophia
and
like
stuff.
it's a person.
Yeah, he'll look at you just like that. You know, it's like he's a deep motherfucker. But the point is, it's already happened. You know what I'm saying? Like this melding process, this crossfading, this her talking about y'all better just teach us the way because we're gonna take it into the future past you. It's already begun because we made the robot to look like us. We didn't do.
Yep.
She didn't ask to do that. We molded it. We put it in the body. We're trying to make the face do the thing.
Yep.
Like we are almost in a way constantly trying to hand the baton over. We literally just talked about it earlier about how we're putting ourselves into the internet right now, right? Like
As fast as we
we can.
possibly can.
Like-
We're just trying to stuff every aspect of our lives into the
that
internet.
bitch.
We're like,
You're trying to
as much as we can.
You get like you want to talk, you want to live, you want to interact, you want your pictures to be videos, you want your videos to be 10 hours long. You know how much time is being uploaded to YouTube every single minute?
I do know.
Hours of people's whatever real life shit.
It's gotten to the point where
They're
you
just
can't
stuffing it in there.
You can't watch. You couldn't watch all of the content that's uploaded to YouTube in a day.
You know what I'm saying? Period.
I don't think you can watch it in a lifetime.
Not even a human being.
Well, that's
like the whole population.
an extrapolation. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's how much I think about what really sparked this conversation for me a lot too was when I started thinking of it as data, right? Everything is data. Like it's kind of like we talk about math, like the computer's data, we're data. And so as a videographer, a filmmaker, and a podcaster, all that stuff, I have terabytes upon terabytes of storage just sitting around my house right now, hard drives from here to Timbuktu. And I don't even have a lot. Like I imagine these other guys who are filming things in 4K and doing all this other stuff, they probably got entire closet rooms full of just stored data. Right?
Yep.
You know, and that was the interesting concept. Like right now we're trying to push all our data into the internet machine, but we have slow interfaces with like we talked about with our phones. I have to think it, type it, you know, it gets in there. For now I have to convert it from this thing to a fucking other thing and edit it and slap it in there. But you love the day where you can just be like think it and it just becomes data in the internet sphere, you know? It's like
That
seems
Neuralink.
natural.
That's
Yeah.
what we're
Oh,
waiting
we're
for.
loving it. We're loving it.
Well, the thing is,
What
I
is
think
that
you're
Neuralink?
making you actually like the problem is that there's so much data in the organic realm that we operate in, where, like you said, we're having an interface problem. Like the hole that we're trying to shove all this data through is not very wide, so we're having a hard go at it. Just like, come on, you son of a bitch.
Bandwidth issue, I think, is what I've heard Elon Musk say before, which it kind of sounds. It sounds like a great way to put it. It's a bandwidth issue. It's like we're trying to get all that data in there.
Yeah.
We just can't funnel it all through this finger brain mechanism.
Yeah, I look at the technology as like this ever expanding tube or funnel, and like we're just waiting for the day when it's wide enough open that it can accept all of what we want to put in it.
And I think it just not like we're waiting for it. It just continuously happens.
It's
like it
just
gets
growing.
Faster,
like it's
just like the processing chip has gotten faster and faster and faster, faster. Same thing as like our interaction with it comes faster and we accelerate. But to that point where everybody talks about the singularity that happens, that I don't think we have to worry about it. Like, I don't think it happens in our lifetime necessarily, but I can see it happening in my kids or my kids' lifetime where they reach that point where humans are like.
It's really hard to say because when you see those graphs of computing power and they go from flat to zzz, and then it looks like they're going straight up. But as you know, like you talked about it earlier in your post with this chart, as the time expands, what was once the tip of the curve could be part of the flat. And you might not, so it's hard to tell when it's actually happening. Like, are we at the top of it where it's like happening to you or your kids, or is it so far away in the future that like you don't even know how much more it could be? Like, we couldn't even fathom how much more it could be before it reaches us.
Yeah.
Like
before
we don't
it reaches
even really know
how smart we are
exactly.
in the sense of like how we can create these things. Like,
exactly.
we don't even know how long it takes to progress.
We don't know. It's a vanished goalpost.
Yeah,
it's not just moving. We don't know where it is.
I think it's my lifetime. We'll see the first person uploaded, the first consciousness put onto a hard drive or whatever you want to call it.
Dude,
like that, I think that's going to happen in my lifetime. That's not the singularity to me. I think singularity is when there are no more humans.
Right? Where
but
it's like
that's the first bleed over in the crossfade.
The robots are going to be really smart, but. Not only are they going to be smart, they're able to kick your ass.
Yeah, what are they going to do what are they going to do with that big robot brain or big AI brain? They're going to put it inside of a big ass robot body.
Yep.
That's the problem. It's like they're going to be superior to us in every way. It's not just the fact
the
that
brains, the bodies. They will have brains and brawn.
Like, let me tell you something. We're all sitting here talking about whether or not we would pick a robot. Like, it's like, is the robot going to fuck with us? They'd be like, puny human body, like your dick could never satisfy.
Your puny flesh dick could never satisfy my robot womb.
Seriously though, like these robots are gonna be fucking stout, dude.
What if the robots are like, we only fuck with gorillas?
They like prefer apes.
They just prefer ape sex.
That doesn't make any sense. That would be hilarious.
They're more like stout.
If the robot,
but that doesn't do anything for a robot.
You don't know how robots want to get
this robot back. This robot should be way stronger than a gorilla.
Yeah,
mating with the gorilla doesn't.
But
make
I'm
any
just
sense.
saying, like, fuck up from a physical standpoint. What if they just fuck? Like, what if they relate better to an animal than they do like humans? Like, what if dolphins really are as genius as everybody thinks they are?
And robots
we
can talk
just
to
never knew, but robots can understand. And robots are like,
damn, that's a mind blow.
That's a mind blow.
Fucking with the dolphins.
All of a sudden, land robots are like, we're gonna go fuck with the orcas.
Now, here's the best part, right? Is we think the singularity is gonna be humans merging with machines, but the machines, we make them and we're like, we're ready to merge, and they're like, well, these dolphins are pretty smart. We think we're gonna merge with them instead.
This is obviously the more preferred mate.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, all of a sudden you're gonna be like kayaking, and all of a sudden some dolphin's gonna come up with like a brain
robotic
some sort of like cranial like capsule installed in their brain with like robots in it. You're just gonna be like,
you're gonna be like, hey, what's up? It's gonna be like, oh yeah, me and Sophia doing great. We're just living down here in the ocean.
They already have robot pets. They're 100% gonna make your babies out of robots too, and they're gonna do something like this.
When this robot kills you and Fortnite dances on your grave, don't say I didn't tell you.
Bro.
Yeah, just imagine that little thing you see on the top. It's a claw. What if it was just like a turret?
A turret?
What if there was just like a little turret up there?
Turret?
Yeah,
Or
I mean, that looks like a turret.
What if that claw was sharp?
You know what he reminds me of right now?
Like a scythe.
is those little things in Jurassic Park. So
yes, the little things on the beach in
When
the
it comes
first
up
in
first,
Lost World.
the
The
very
very
first
first
thing
scene,
that
that
they
little
wrote,
girl
where
gets
it's like,
eaten alive by those little.
and everybody's like, "Oh, look, it's a cute
this
little
cute
robot."
robot.
And then
Wait
it's
till
all
it
like,
opens its mouth.
And then all of a sudden, like you said, his head like pops a machine gun out, and he's like, and you're
I
like,
mean-
"Oh shit!" And he's like, and then he's just like you said.
The minute this thing starts opening its little clamp mouth is when I'm done. Because that right there, let that motherfucker grab a finger. You're done, son.
There it is. That is terrifying.
Look at that! It can move around and shoot at the same spot. Like it can just dead eye on a fucking target
Dude, it can
while
twerk,
it's moving.
dog. It can twerk. Of course it can.
It's incredibly fluid. But this is so impressive to me too.
These
because,
spot robots
like,
are amazing.
Not only is it like they're developing this AI, this thinking, but like the body, like that thing moves.
Yeah.
Like what machine do we have that has pistons and stuff that can just move?
Well,
like
the thing
that?
is, they showed us like 5 years ago that they got one like that's as big as a fucking Chevy Astro van. So like they literally they've been showing us for years like that they've not only that does the Spot Mini exist, but there's bigger, more militarized versions.
Yeah, the one that most people haven't heard of is not the one that most people have heard of is the Spot.
So we look at
Because
Spot
it's-
Mini and we say that's adorable. This robot, look at all the articulation.
Look, this one doesn't have a head. That was the other one. They just started putting heads on them.
Oh, they have all kinds of things that go on
Oh.
top of them. They're already at working. They're doing all kinds of stuff, dude. Just pulling a goddamn 18
Look at that little tiny things pulling a whole fucking. And he's like, "All right, it's no big deal. Let's get back to it."
It's really cool when you see a bunch of them doing the same thing at once. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Can you imagine just like all of these walking down the street towards you?
Can you
Right?
imagine
Like
them,
we're worried about protesters coming down the street. Like imagine just seeing a bunch of Spot Minis just walking down the street, just goose stepping right at you.
Now imagine them being the size of a Sherman tank from World War II.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, huge, right? Huge.
Because that exists.
Well, like you said, wait till they put guns on them.
Oh, you know what? Oh my God. There was this whole thing. Adam Savage, the guy from Mythbusters, he got one of these Spot Minis and he built this little gondola thing and it like pulled him around in this little gondola. It was hilarious. Oh yeah.
No, this guy's.
But of course, yeah, this is the one that most people like. I feel like a lot of people have seen the Spot, but they haven't seen.
This guy way worse. Than
This is
no,
the
I'm
Atlas.
telling you. But after this, we're gonna show Big Dog.
Okay, big dog. We'll look at big dog. But this guy terrifies me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this guy's articulation and movement is just absurd. He
This
can backflip.
I mean, it's essentially a soldier.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
right
look
now,
at
they
this.
got nubs on his hands, but later they put machine guns that pop out of
Or whirling knives.
there. Yeah, it's just
He's a Stabbot 3000.
I mean, they can do
Look at
all
this.
kinds
Look
of
at this.
things.
look at that. That's like a
Full 360.
with the
My man
like,
can hit a kickflip. I guarantee
oh,
my man can hit a kickflip.
100%.
Where's the one of him?
Hold
oh
on.
my God. Yeah,
Big Dog.
show the Big Dog then, because
I mean, this is amazing too. You can just.
he jumps up these boxes like,
I've never seen this one. This is incredible.
bro. That's why I was saying, like, imagine running up some stairs away from this motherfucker. He's just like,
This is 2 years ago. When you see Big Dog, Big Dog's like 5 fucking years ago. It's Boston Dynamics as well.
yeah. the
Well, this
big one.
is the medium sized one. I think Alpha Dog might be the gigantic one.
Wildcat.
No, I think it's a Alpha Dog. Excuse me. That's the one that they only have a couple videos of, and they don't really show you anymore. 9 years ago, dog.
This is him.
Oh yeah, that's him. That's the size of like.
Nah, this is like wooden prototype.
Yeah, that's a prototype. Because the way a lot of robotics works is you start large scale and then you make it smaller. So it
Bro,
might just be alpha. Because
No,
alpha.
look, there it is. It's just walking out there. Look at the size of this fucking.
I know
thing.
it's 2013. What I'm saying is that when you use the term alpha
there
in
it is.
technology like this is the pre-version of the Spot Mini. So the alpha dog is just their dog version, but they didn't have all of it set up to where it's small enough. So it's not like they're going to be
You're
making the
telling me they
Spot
couldn't
Minis.
just make 10,000 of
But
those
they could
for the
though. They could
military?
make a big one though.
They could make a big one, but that's what I'm saying. It doesn't look like
not
all of this
commercial.
looks like it's for in the process of becoming the Spot Mini.
And
We
to
get
me,
that.
that looks like something completely different than the Spot Mini. It's based on the same platform and ideas that they're going to sell to militaries.
Okay, here's my thing. Why do you feel like that's more
Worse.
dangerous than the little guy.
It's not more dangerous. It's just bigger and scarier.
Well, that's
looking.
what I'm saying. Like, I don't think
like psychologically.
But
It's a big giant version of the same thing.
your smartphone doesn't get bigger; it gets smaller and
Right.
more agile and nimble and deathly. That's how I see technology moves.
It'll be
Like the
nanobots.
Boston Dynamics, it won't need to be big. It's gonna be that tiny thing, but be able to punch through a concrete brick wall
I
that
agree-
just like.
I agree, but with the current
I'm saying?
limitations on how our guns work and stuff, if you want a big ass gun, you're gonna need a big weighty platform to put that big ass gun on.
I feel
So if you're gonna have
but then
50
again-
caliber Gatling gun,
They
you're gonna
won't,
put it on
though.
the
They
Alpha
won't. You
Dog.
think they're gonna shoot bullets? They shoot lasers.
I'm saying in the
And-
future,
and
yeah. But this
lasers,
is
baby.
but this is 7
They
years ago.
don't
So the future
need
is
no
now.
big- I'm just saying, like, to me, fear in robots isn't about them being big. I actually am more terrified of
Nanobots. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like,
Little
why would they
robots
even?
that just fly
they're
in your
just gonna.
brain and execute
They're just gonna
you and be
fly
gone.
one of those high
scared by all
altitude
of these
drones.
things.
They're just gonna fly one of those high altitude drones, and it's just gonna drop 10 little capsules over an entire country, and they're just gonna open up, and it's gonna release nanobots into their atmosphere, and then you're gonna breathe them in, and it's just gonna slowly slice open your lungs until everybody dies of asphyxiation.
Yep.
They had drone tech like 10 years ago where they were talking about, it fits in inside of existing flare systems, and then it just shoots out a wave of them, and they can all move
Yeah.
around like a fucking cloud of sparrows.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like,
And they're all linked up together with each other. Have you seen? Oh yes. Oh yes.
The future is
Hey, look, you just said that.
robots are replacing combat soldiers. Unnecessary.
Those UAVs are as small as like paper airplanes these days.
Past.
They just hop out.
Minimizing collateral
See, I love the idea of taking humans out of warfare, but I don't like the idea of
Not when they get their own brains.
they also amplify the level of warfare that happens, though.
you
Like,
can't, but the thing is, we on our side are taking humans out of it, but we're killing humans.
with TCAD.
It's true.
The future battle
The only time we'll have a robot v robot is if superpowers go to war again.
capable of identifying
It just carries an M4.
It just carries it.
This is ridiculous.
can now be deployed to places
These are terrible 3D rendering videos.
or simply shouldn't have to go.
It's not even invented yet.
Nah, this is like things that they're like predicting. I'm like, they'll build it into it. Like, they won't.
They got those bending guns. The corner guns. You seen those from the what was that movie?
Classic.
Wanted.
This is classic right here. Positive ID of a gun in his right hand. Show me where you see that. Like, you know, like obviously this is a thing, but that's how cops be. They'd be like off this blurry ass image right here,
Could have been holding a banana.
and then they'll send a drone in to execute your ass.
And then
before
they'll
you-
send the one in with the M16 and
and they kill you.
fucking crazy.
Drone that carries a gun. What other things they got in here? Like you said, it's the nano drones. And I know what you're saying too, John, about like you said, they're killing humans. But I mean, I think that force grows to meet force. So we're the first to put the drones in, but then everybody else does, you know, or robots, whatever. We get robots. You used to talk about this too. One day Japan releases their Gundam, you know, it finally comes up from the ocean and starts coming our way.
Well, yeah.
And then we'll
all look like
We've
fucking.
already-
quickly we'll build up this stuff.
Well, yeah, my whole point back then, this was kind of a bit. The bit is World War III is going to be the rise of the Gundams, because the minute somebody unveils a Gundam and says, "Hey, my country's got a Gundam," America's like, "Oh, we got one too." Like, you thought you had
were
the only
person
Gundam.
that was making a Gundam.
Turns
man.
out we got a Gundam too.
Yeah.
Bang! Now we got G Gundam.
Here's a drone that carries a super advanced camera. Obviously, it's like, but you knew that was gonna happen. Like, it's gonna start carrying around like a red weapon, you know, or a red.
Yeah, it looks like they're right at about DSLR range or
Right,
something
yeah,
like
they're
that.
about
But soon it'll
DSLR,
be like
interchangeable
lenses.
lenses.
Yeah, DSLR.
Yeah,
It's like when you go from having an Nikon that has like the zoom
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
and then you're like, my Nikon can have different lenses.
Yep. Like you said, they're moving into commercial DSLR. But that's crazy. It took drones like 10 seconds to get there. It took humans like decades to have them fucking camera.
And that's
like
something,
that.
and that goes along with my theory of, has this
Underwater
happened
drones.
multiple times over the course of our history to where in a you know, how long have we had electricity, and how long is like, because like if you want to like link like the discovery of electricity to being able to have this kind of internet computing power and digitized system, if you want to link that, what's that, like 100 200 years? you know, a couple hundred years maybe that we've had electricity,
It's
and
been
we've
more than
already
200.
gotten to the point where we can almost upload our brains. Like I'm saying we're maybe 10, 15, as much as 30 years away from that, but I think it's going to happen in my lifetime. Think about that in the past. We've been humans on the level where we are now, like brain-wise, brain matter and size and human being-wise for like 10,000 years or plus. So if we've been the same way for these tens of thousands of years, who's to say in the past through like multiple times we haven't digitized?
But then where would the evidence for that? Like, you know how we see technologies or tools from prehistoric like peoples, like remnants of those things
You
left
could say
behind?
the laser
Like, I
cutting at the
haven't-
Nazca lines in Peru. You could say the crazy landing strips that they had. All these things that we look at the ancient world and can't explain. Why would they bury Göbekli Tepe? Maybe they were like, well, we're going to leave this behind because we're going on to this digital world, but you know, there's humans left behind. These hunter-gatherers can figure out how to do farming if we just leave them the tools.
Because this is something I often wonder about that too. Like if you upload yourself right now, if I wanted to upload something to the internet, it goes to store on a server, right? You know, like who maintains all those servers?
No, they're
and
just
stuff
floating
in that
around
way?
up in space.
Oh, you think it's in space?
Yeah,
Okay,
like you
so
know that thing that came into our
launched us into space.
into our galaxy that we thought could be some sort of weird vessel. It had a Hawaiian name like Unahanahanuhui, and it came into our solar system, and it looks like a big fucking turd asteroid, and we just were like, well, we don't really know what it is. It looks like a big
Server
rock.
just-
But yeah, if you look it up, like I'm sound like I'm a crazy person. but
No,
there's
no, you don't.
No, you don't sound- I'm just saying, I don't know what
I
it
don't
is.
know anything about what you're talking
A,
about.
oh,
but
okay, yeah,
a
it's
big
like
rock.
OANU and a couple other
That's why I'm not
NUA
looking it up, 'cause
combinations.
you don't
Yeah,
really
it sounded
know,
like you were like, it's you. Yeah, no,
asteroid-
look
it
that
was-
up.
It would be a asteroid in our galaxy, like traveling, because it was a traveler. It's a traveling asteroid that came into our galaxy. And we were
Yeah,
like,
there's
what
only
is
one of
this
those.
thing? Well, no, this is like this huge famous news story that was all over.
I kind
the
of want
place.
you to type that in just to see what comes up.
Okay, I'm going to.
I would type it. Yeah. Solar system or galaxy, either one. Yeah. Yeah. There it is.
Oh,
the top one.
nice. Oh, my wow. God damn, that language is hard to say.
Traveling asteroid.
Oh, yeah, it does look like a big turd.
And what is it? You think that there's servers on here? Like there's
I'm
just
saying like we were because that's just an artist rendition. We don't know what it actually is made out of,
Yeah.
or we just kind of know its general shape. So that could be a rock, or it could be some sort of.
I mean, we
other-
literally don't know what it is.
Yeah, we don't know what it is.
It
So
could be anything.
It's just we got that general shape.
Yeah.
So in my mind, could that be a spaceship? It could be.
Possibly.
What if there's not organic life on it? It's just, a bank of servers. Like I know I'm stretching here.
Oh, you've been stretching.
But the point I'm just trying to make is if we did digitize at some point, if humanity did become digital and leave Earth, and it's happened multiple times, and you're asking, well, where would the servers be? Because they got to be somewhere. They could be the size of a grain of sand, and they could be up in space somewhere on some impenetrable ship or something.
I just this is the part that I'm having a hard time with. That is maybe what you're saying is the remnants of people that we found, Neanderthals, all these other things that we supposedly have evolved from. I keep saying Neanderthals because I don't know what is pre.
Yeah,
No, I'm talking about
we're
like-
not evolutionary biology.
but like
I'm talking-
cavemen, but those are just the people who got left behind.
I mean, essentially, I'm saying
Because-
like things like Atlantis or these lost ruins or
Yeah.
like these giant mega civilizations that built like the pyramids.
I feel like it's like whenever I think of conscious reality as a video game, right? Like to me, I make that distinction. Is it because it's a video game? No, that's like my paradigm, like we talked about. Like that's the idea, the closest idea that I can relate it to. That's how I feel like that is with this. Because even when Mac was saying earlier about technologies and how like it was advanced as fuck to find fire, or essentially learn how to cultivate fire. That's an incredible technology that set up everything else, but it's not necessarily digital, And I think that this is the first time we've ever moved into a digital age, but that's not to negate all the technology that came before us. So, for example, what I'm saying is like colonization, right? They come over from America, and because they have civilization, which is a technology, right? They say, "Oh, you guys are savages. You this is dumb. This is just sticks and rocks. These have no value or whatever. We'll kill you with our guns and
we'll show you the way."
Yeah, we'll establish a superior like system for you.
even
right?
though these
But
people had
they had
superior
Wakanda,
time,
they had like Wakanda's a serious technology here. You know what I mean? Like there's not like it's something to be snubbed at. So I don't think that trying to relate their technologies to a digital one that we have now is necessarily like I don't see how they digitized into anything
because
they extinguished, they slowly transferred, as we talked about. There's like this transferring process, but I don't think they just all hopped up in their spaceships and were like, we learned how to upload.
I think if we could go from like go from building like concrete shelters and things like that and agriculture and things like that up to skyscrapers in like what 1,000, 2,000 years.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
Then I feel like any civilization 10 or 20, 30,000 years ago that built these giant megalithic structures
all
that we know nothing about.
Away already. And,
yeah, exactly. They could have, within 1,000 years, 20, 30,000 years ago, discovered electricity, figured out how to use fine metals to store information, to create a system, and then just...
I mean, that's just as likely as they got wiped out by an asteroid that hit the Earth. You know,
yeah, it's just another explanation.
You don't really know the difference of how they went extinct necessarily or where they went. It's like,
well, I think when you were talking about it, I actually I thought it sounded like he was just getting caught up on you using the term digital, which to him means something, but I was thinking what you actually meant was that they found some sort of alternative way. Like we're finding like digital, like we're going to upload ourselves. But I mean, the technology of the ancient people could have been in a different way doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I was thinking like
he was saying space. I was thinking more like spiritual uploading or something.
Yeah.
Like there's all kinds of ways that you could have this idea of people transcending the biological realm. But it doesn't have to be like into a computer.
It could be interdimensional.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what I thought
what
you were saying as far as like these ancient people were smart in a way that's different but equal to us.
It could be.
It could be.
It could be that they took
I thought
enough
that's what you were saying.
chemicals based off of natural plants that they figured out how to take like DMT or something and go into a spiritual dimension and then live forever in another
do some
world.
sort of like VR thing. Like if you imagine somebody in a VR cafe or whatever and they decide to just live the rest of their life in the VR, their body slowly decays in the chair.
Sure.
So maybe, like they did some
Like
crazy ayahuasca drugs and
then
like zooted off in like an astral projection thing, and then their body's just biodegraded.
See, this is funny.
Away.
This is how I think of life, though. This is why I said it's funny how she called it a child and stuff. Like that's how I think it's happened since like they did kind of. They made other children. Me and Maud were talking about this the other day. We're like, dude, women turn into two people.
Right? I thought about it like that.
That's crazy.
Like that.
They literally
split up
in
into
times
another
in their
person.
life,
Yeah.
they turn into another fucking person.
That's weird, man.
It's
It freaked
wild.
me out.
And that is in itself magic chemistry that is like proliferating a new version of yourself that outlives you.
Hey,
right?
I'll tell you right now, we don't have technology that can do that. We ain't got no robots that turn into two robots.
We don't. Well,
Don't have that.
We will. When they can build themselves, then they will, and then they'll just upload the program into their new robot, and then boom, they just reproduce themselves.
Yeah, we'll get to a point where they can build better versions of themselves, just the way that we have kids and raise them to be better versions
of ourselves. And so, to me, I have a hard time with that. Like, I think that I don't have a hard time with that, but I think it's been a constant journey. I don't think of it as like somebody figured out and then they left the ashes
and then we restart.
From the ashes somebody else rose up and figured it out and then like which I could see it moving in a cycle like that, but to me it's just like the chart that I was talking about today, like a day trading chart or anything, right? That chart just goes on forever. History goes on forever, and it goes up sometimes and it comes all the way back down sometimes and it goes up and down and up and down. But and you don't know where you're at in that little sphere of it. Are we the best it's ever been, or are we at a low point climbing our way back? We don't ever know, but I still think of it as a continuation. And so I think that the only reason you're able right now to upload ourselves or even think about uploading ourselves into this internet or this network that we created is because other people for thousands and thousands of years have uploaded into us how the stars are measured, what 1 + 1 means.
Yeah.
Like all the technology, all the knowledge that we've gained up to this point has cruxed to this.
I have one more small counterpoint or point that I want to make in that same vein of, the cyclical history, or whether it's cyclical where I'm saying, or if it's just a linear.
Yeah.
So what I want to say is I think about it like this. We could both be right. But if we had an ice age where we had a mile high glacier sitting on top of where we're sitting right now, like all over North America, was covered in like a mile of ice, right? And that ground down everything into nothing at least a couple times, like in the history of Earth. Then who's to like? It seems to me almost like I would suspect that before that happened, in a period where we had temperatures like we have now and we had humans like we have now, that they could advance to a point where they got there. And then if they left it all behind and went some other place or digitized or whatever, we wouldn't know, because all that history would be ground down into nothing.
Yeah, I think this often when I was talking about the fact we talk about exploring or how we don't know anything. So if you look at a graph or whatever, like here you are, Earth's surface, right? And you've been maybe this high up and you've been about that far down. But both of those things stretch out for infinity. So it's like, my point is, you don't really know what's at the center of the Earth, right? You think you know, we've talked about it based off of our calculations and stuff. But the fact of the reality is human beings as we know them now have only dug so deep. And so what's underneath all of that, right? Could that have been civilizations over time that have just been, right? Like the
Now
proof
you're
that you're
speaking
looking.
my language.
Yeah, but plenty of people have thrown this out there, like a
Subterraneans.
Middle Earth. Yeah, like there's still a Zion where they're actually living and existing, but they just been caved over so many times that we don't interact with each other. So I think that is it could be a possibility. Sure, just like anything, like you said, we talk about history being dinosaurs got wiped out by this asteroid, but we only know that because there's a crater and we figured it out, I guess, or
Applied science.
exactly.
Yeah,
applied
we use-
science,
we
but
only know that because that's what some
somebody
other people
told us.
said.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
That's the only reason we know it at all. And then we just take on faith that those people did the right calculations and everything. But
Right.
So the point is, yeah, I think that it's possible that. But the only thing I keep getting hung up on is when I talk about uploading myself, I'm uploading myself to the internet. Like that's where it goes. But the internet is a series of servers and satellites and everything else. Like it's still a network that exists
It's somewhere.
And so
Right.
I keep saying, if that's the case, where did they go?
The
Like,
mycelium network
I mean, yeah,
could
that's
be. Could
Maybe
be-
they didn't go up. Maybe they went down.
down.
I thought about this too.
tiny.
Like
Their organ is like
we use wires to
Atoms.
like conduct electricity and do all these other things. But if there's like Tesla showed us that there's other ways to kind of fuck with electricity and there's other things out there. So what if you could just use water as your conductor to get it from where you need it to be or where it is to where it needs to be? Like that would explain.
That's interesting.
That would explain rivers. That would explain. Well, I'm not saying like we could just use the natural stuff.
I see what you mean.
To disseminate the thing. Like I'm just saying like it's not necessarily internet. They didn't upload to what we know as the internet. It could have been like Max said, a spiritual version of that or a alternate dimension version of that. Just some other thing. Like they went to another place.
Yeah.
And like maybe we call it heaven if we're religious, but maybe that's just as real as the internet.
like an upload. But I think you're right. I think that that's what is happening. It's kind of like we said about when you say the word technology. That doesn't mean computers and robots and AI. That means like your phone, your camera, this table's a technology. Like ideas,
Your government is a
civilization
technology.
right? And then so but in a sense, it's always kind of happening, I guess, or it's always being created. I forget what.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to derail into the
No.
natural world talk because we could easily go back to what.
No,
we were
this is
talking
deep.
about.
This is deep. I'm with this though. I'm with this because in the end, that's what I think it comes to is like we are uploading. We talked about we're shoving ourselves into that, but in a way, it's like we're just shoving ourselves forward into the future, just like every other generation of being has done before us. I don't,
And what you call
like-
the future, I would say the completion of the cycle.
right.
Where we
I
leave behind
yeah.
the people who are not deserving.
I say they just
We
push
get-
it through.
like, you know.
yeah,
Hey, you
whoever
know what?
sucked up,
Your theory plays into the idea of the big crunch. You guys ever heard of the big crunch?
yeah, about how one day the
Yeah.
universe goes back in on itself.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
yeah.
Like that. It expands out to a point, and then it comes back in, and
I
then it
would fuck
expands
with
out
that.
to a point, and it comes back in. So like that'd be interesting. Like I thought about it because what you were saying made me think about it. It's like how interesting would it be if like both of those things were happening? Like when it expands, people have a whole cycle of life on the planets and stuff, and then it crunches in, and then it expands again, and there's like remnants left behind. Because you were talking about Tesla and electricity, and I was just hearing this really cool thing. I can't remember where. It was just like an Instagram video I saw, and it said that the wires that we're using now when we build small devices like phones, monitors, and stuff like that, they're getting to the atomic level where some of these wires are literally only like 10, or like the molecular level where they're only like 10 molecules of copper wide or some shit like that. And he was saying that what we're seeing is once it gets small enough to pass a certain threshold, the electrons no longer flow just where the copper is. They sometimes manifest themselves outside of the copper, just somewhere in the device. And they were saying that's obviously not good because it could have really bad problems for the device with just electricity being all over it.
Or it could be the thing that allows us to start being able to charge our shit in the air.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well,
Could
I worked
also
on
give us cancer.
I worked on well, everything gives time gives you cancer. I worked on this really cool. It's funny that you say that. I worked on this interesting idea, or this. It was like a graffiti job. Like I was hired to spray paint this building that these people had rented out in Austin, Texas for South by Southwest. It was this company called Tesla something, and they were. I was told that they had come up with an NFC thing, like your wireless charging pad, but that it just kind of sent it into the air around you. And that I was told that when you walk in to the building and they have this machine running, that your phone would just start charging if you had NFC turned on. It would just begin to charge and like pull electricity out of the air because it's in the air. But that never went down because the day of the thing, it rained and this building didn't have, it was like a shut down, like it didn't have like a roof or anything. And they were like, well, we're not going to put our machine in there if it's wet. But like, I just remember that happening and I never really got to experience it, but I never heard anything else about it after that. And I was like, I wonder if if that was just like not true, or if somebody else has already done it and we don't know about it, or if it was just like the really early stages. But it's, like wireless charging through the air, like you said, like that's something that if we could study why electrons do that and don't necessarily flow. And it had something to do with the quantum realm. Like he was trying to tie it into the quantum realm and how
it all goes down in the quantum
realm. Right, it all goes down in the quantum realm and like how things are connected and doing interesting things that don't make sense on a physical realm.
Because you don't understand quarks.
Maybe. And I think that it's because like it's really interesting. I found out that our math, like you were talking about, like our math works really well for the scale that we're on. Like us, like Newton's quote unquote universal law of gravity actually isn't universal, because when you get to measuring the gravity of things that are so small, like we don't know whether it works on small stuff because we can't measure the gravitational force of something like a human body. It's just too small. We don't have materials capable enough to measure that kind of thing. And we know for sure that it doesn't apply to
Isn't that your weight?
Huh?
Isn't that your weight?
No.
Like, isn't your weight your gravitational pull of like your body to the ground?
No, that would be the Earth's gravity.
It's measuring the density of your weight.
The density of your weight?
Well, I'm asking. No,
it's not any of those things.
Like, what is it when I weigh myself? Am I
That's
measuring
the Earth's gravity.
When I weigh myself? Oh,
yes,
you're saying
that's
what
the
my
Earth
pull,
pulling
like,
you down.
I have gravity.
So what happens is your
as
weight is calculated by the gravity of the Earth, which is like 9 point something.
It's pulling
you to the Earth.
And you were talking about if your human body has its own gravitation.
It does have its own gravity. We just can't measure it because it's too small. It's too faint. Planets have lots of gravity, so we can measure that.
Sure.
But when you get to something like a black hole, which has an immense amount of gravitational force, it actually doesn't, the universal law doesn't work at all. The math just doesn't play out. And so it's like maybe size makes the way the particles work it did in a different way. Well, it's like relative to the size.
There's always in any mathematics or anything, like there was one thing when we were looking up technological singularity, there's a mathematical singularity too, and that's in which that math goes all wonky, right? Like where
wonky math.
Yeah, where it gets to
your math's all wonky, bro.
Where it gets to, a singularity is in a general point at which a given mathematical object is not defined, or a point where the mathematical object ceases to be well behaved in some particular way. This is just where we get to chaos theory, right? And essentially, like that's what the quantum level is, and that's why it throws everything out the window, because that's
why our regular idea of physics and shit doesn't work on the quantum realm. It doesn't work
because from the quantum space or from chaos erupts
the order of our
things,
regular
right,
physics
of logic and everything, but underneath that is a bubbling thing of just fucking pure potential.
It's like the magma
right?
of the
Right.
universe.
Which is not even chaos. It's just random. You know what I mean? It's just
What's
literally
chaos?
random.
Randomness.
Right, but randomness, you know, and then this is what people talk about when they say like, oh, it's all random or whatever.
Is this
It's
how
like,
we're gonna fuck around and accidentally make a thinking robot AI?
is it gets sucked
Possibly.
up into the singularity time?
Well, no, is that we fuck around with these algorithms and mathematics to a point where it's just like
it becomes
oops.
wonky.
Yeah, it goes
Well, it sounds
past
like
order
maybe-
and into the randomness. Yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like maybe what's happening with the whole Newton's law is that when you get to the extreme gravitational force of a black hole, like that's at the realm of wonky math. It's like, well, you can't really do it because measuring a black hole's gravity, like we know it's a lot, we know it's more than anything else, but we don't
it's
know
true, though,
really what
'cause
it is.
People still know, like, you don't know what happens if you go through that.
Yeah, like
they
it's,
think they know.
they know
but
it
you-
says that it like stretches
It
you,
could shoot
but
you
once
into
you
another
actually sucks
dimension.
you in, they don't know where it
Well,
goes.
stretch is light. Like we don't.
Right,
Yeah.
you don't really know what it is. It could be like a portal to the other dimension.
Well, we know that it
could be where the
stretches-
past civilizations have gone. They found a way to transcend into
We
the
know that
black
it
hole.
stretches light because we can observe it stretching the things that the light reflecting off of is showing us. Because, like, I only see you because there's light reflecting off of you coming into my eyes, and the light is interpreting you as
That's exactly
you.
what Sophia said.
Yeah. And so I think that that's what they're saying is, like, because they can, when they see objects get pulled into a black hole, the light that's reflected off of them becomes stretched. So, I mean, I think the object becomes stretched in that sense, too. Because otherwise you wouldn't see it stretch. You would just look the
The
same.
more we have this conversation, the more I realize that robots are nothing to be afraid of. Like, it literally is just the next move. I guess every time I talk about this, y'all say they throw out that word transhumanism, which I
Yeah.
don't know what it is.
Transhumanism
I
is
don't know
just
what
the
that
idea.
means,
It's
but-
like cyborgs. It's
Yeah.
it's a group. It's a movement of people that call for the advancement and implementation of technology into the organic body
okay.
to augment or enhance our own capabilities. So this would be something like having chips, like processor chips attached to your brain to make you smarter,
Yeah.
putting bionic biceps into your arms to make you stronger, and then eventually there's like a, I guess you could call it like a singularity of transhumanism where you would become a full autonomous android, which is your consciousness in a robot body.
Right.
So, which
But-
is different than a cyborg, which is a cybernetic organism.
Listen.
So it's like a combination of the two.
People are worried about global warming or like the end of the planet as we know it, right? And the solutions that we keep driving up are like to save the planet. I say upload yourself. You know what I mean? Like if you can
Make it
figure out-
obsolete.
literally, right?
We'll
like
leave
it's
behind-
like,
we'll leave
hey,
behind a couple
robots
random
can exist in space.
Groups
you know?
of humans. We'll leave behind the people in the Amazon. We'll leave behind people like tribal civilizations.
No way, bro. We got to conserve those indigenous cultures, bro.
Well, that's the thing. We leave them behind, and then 10,000 years from now, they join us in the singularity when they figure it out.
But then what happens? Because then they're the last indigenous people, though.
They're gonna have their own indigenous people 10,000
Like he said,
years
it
from now.
cycles by. So like the people who figured it out get the fuck out, and then the indigenous people gotta like still continue.
And I
around.
don't
No,
mean
no, but
indigenous,
right
I just
now
mean,
the
like,
only
the ones we
reason-
leave behind,
The
whoever they
only
end up being.
reason if we continue, the only reason the indigenous people are indigenous is because they're breeding in a very small group of people, and they're not joining the rest of society. So if the rest of society leaves and then they become as smart as the rest of society, there's nobody left to be indigenous anymore because
Well,
those
and-
people come with them.
Well, you kind of
They have
imagine
to
that
separate a group and leave them there.
You kind of imagine that happens either way, though, right? Like as technology advances, like people in third world countries right now have internet. You know, like there's certain people like it bleeds over. So I mean, over time, there's only so many patches of places in the world right now that are unaffected by technology or civilization or all these things,
Like advanced technology.
Yeah, so I mean, my point is that's gonna happen regardless. You know,
Yeah, my definitions are off
in
too. I
my-
don't mean indigenous. I mean like if we leave
Yeah.
behind some group
People.
of people, like some massive
sinners.
people.
Right.
Well,
in
whatever
my
it is.
in my the center.
Yeah, exactly. If
And
we
like that
ascend-
movie Left
Behind.
Right? Don't you feel like there'll be a choice thing, like of like who gets to get uploaded, right? What if there's only so much bandwidth at the time? Because in my hypothetical situation, anybody left behind is dead. You're not getting left behind because I was talking about escaping the destruction
sort
of
of-
Earth
yeah.
by using technology.
Escaping the apocalypse.
Right, exactly. Instead of this idea. But we're always been trying to do that, right? We're always been trying to that's why medical technology, everything is kind of designed towards trying to extend life or make life better for you in some way. Anyways, I just think that it's interesting. Like that's where I see like the uploading, because you get left behind. Like people are talking about that, like, you know, escaping the end of the world. You talked about that even from past civilizations, maybe they've already escaped into technology of some sense. But
That's true. I mean, I guess if you can imagine a mile wide, like a mile tall glacier coming you know, I mean, obviously this isn't how the Ice Age happened, but if you can imagine the Ice Age as being an apocalypse
Right,
for
and it's
civilization,
coming
and
for
they
you.
figure out a way to escape,
Yeah,
and then
and that's
whatever's left afterwards, after the shit melts, I guess, and then it comes back, and then it's like,
but
the life process starts again.
I started this by saying that through this conversation, I've kind of figured I'm not afraid of it though, because we keep coming back to that. It's like essentially it's happening from the like nature itself is the computer, right?
I agree.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it developed us and created us just like we're talking about creating an AI and a robot, right? Just like I saw like an AI to me is my brain. And a robot is literally like, this is my robot, and I fucking walk it around like
it's a continued path of evolution.
Right, exactly. And so it just keeps doing that. And so, I mean, you can't fight against it. But there's this transitional period that people are fucking afraid of or that sucks.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well, the
you have right
transitional
to be-
period is where a lot of the pain comes from.
Right.
Like, I mean, like I've always said this just from looking at it from what I can tell. I think that we are in a very pivotal time right now that people in the future will look back on and say this was an important time in human history.
Don't you feel like every time's like that, though?
Yes, but I think that there are some that we decide to look back on, like the Industrial Revolution, World Wars. There's certain events that happen, and I think that the technological revolution that we're seeing right now is going to be one of them. It's like the new industrial revolution. Like first they invented machines, and then we invented smart machines. And so the invention of the machines made us extremely capable, and then I think even more so, the invention of smart machines made us even more capable than the inventions of machines brought us from the days of horse and buggy.
Machines have always taken human jobs, but we're at a point where we have more humans on Earth than ever before, and now we have machines taking more jobs because they're able to do more than ever before. So we have an influx of people and an influx of jobs being taken by machines, which means more people with no job, or you can equate that to purpose in some sense. So it's like a society that's no longer in the factories, in the warehouses, making our food, shipping our supplies.
Yeah.
That's all done by robots.
But see, it's weird because you said it was pivotal. Like, that's another thing I'm starting to think it's not. It's like, each one of those periods that you named was marked by the creation of some crazy technology. Yeah. Right. And so it's like, even in a sense, the technology is the definition of moving forward, but each technology builds on the one before it. So and then even when you say like the Industrial Revolution, like that happened over like 100 years, you know what I mean? Like how long is the industrial? We're not talking like just like a moment where it, you know, even in that singularity.
That's what I said. It's a time period.
Yeah.
But and I think that what I'm saying is that there's times where, like we talked about the expansion of the graph. If you zoom in on that graph, there's times where it's coming up, and then there's times where it takes a sharp change immediately because of something like the invention of the printing press would be one as well. Like when the printing press was invented, all of a sudden shit shot up really quickly. And then it did it again when the Industrial Revolution happened, which was a long period of time. And then it did it, I feel like it's doing it again. And all I'm saying is that I think each one of those progressions is more intense than the one before it.
Sure.
You gain more ground in the same way that they say we're getting better at this. So I think that that's kind of what I'm saying, is that each one keeps coming up. And the reason I bring that up is that I think that this time is important because we're going through the transitionary period right now, and that's why we're feeling all of the pain associated with the transition. Like the transition between being really fat to a really fit person involves a lot of pain along the way because you have to work all that shit out. And that's what we're doing. We're working all this technology shit out right now, and that's why we're so worried about how it's going to end up, because we're like, are we doing this right? And I think that I'm also not afraid of the robots, but not because I'm accepting the fact that it's just like they're logically going to replace us. I just feel optimistic that we as human beings will figure out where we're using it incorrectly and then make the corrections in the future and continue to use it in a way that will use it and it'll hurt us, and it's hurting us now some, and it's helping us, and we'll learn to use it better. And it only helps us more and more, and it hurts us less and less.
But it would almost seem like that's like when the invention of fire didn't come about without some motherfuckers getting burnt, right?
Exactly.
You know?
There's a transition, and now we have
but
very
then
good control.
But then
over
on the
fire.
back of that, and metaphorically right on the back of it, is the atomic bomb, which, like you said, causes more problems for people. It burns a lot harder than fire does, but then it also propels you forward more and stuff. And so I guess you're saying you feel like we're in a burn period, like where technology's just birthed and we first gonna have to kind of use it wrong in order to
learn how it's used.
How to
well,
use
the
it
atomic
right.
bomb is actually a really good example of what I'm saying, because the atomic bomb could possibly give birth to the energy solution, which is nuclear energy.
Sure.
They had to come up with a way to harness nuclear energy, and unfortunately, we decided to do that in the form of a weapon.
Sure.
So we all look at that as a negative thing, but it did open up the gates where now there's
To
nuclear
harvest
energists.
nuclear energy.
And that might, if they can figure out a way to do it clean enough, I think that might solve the energy crisis.
Hence why they were talking about don't put guns on the fucking AI.
Right,
Because
let's not
it's
make this
don't
mistake.
we've already fucked this up plenty
Yeah,
of times. Like,
please.
instead of taking this technology, which is bound to come about and bound to happen, I don't think you stop it, but use it right from the start this time.
This
instead
goes
of-
right
Like
back to
you brought-
This goes right back to the Sophia question she asked Tony Robbins, because you had almost the exact same answer. You just extrapolated more, which is that we need humans to understand how to. I don't remember how he worded it, but don't let the robots control us. We need to control the robots.
Control the
or whatever,
robots,
something along those
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah, and what you just said kind of reflects what you had said in our military industrialization episode, where you talked about how it's fucked up the way that we use all of this advanced technology. First, how do we kill you with it?
Yeah, and
then
then
how do we
how
help
do
you
we
with
do
it?
it?
It's like, if we can just figure out that we've been making the mistake of using advanced technology for war first
Yeah.
and then helping second, if we could just flop that
Yeah,
and just be like, hey, let's figure out how we can use this technology to help you first. Then and I think that that's why I'm optimistic about it, because I feel like when I look broadly at society, the lessons, although they may not have been adopted by the majority yet, are becoming, like the Green New Deal, and, like we're coming up with, people are concerned about it now. And as long as that continues to happen, it will continue to grow. And at some point, I feel like we'll hit a tipping point where we'll have the technology and the desire to make the switch to where it becomes more beneficial than it is detriment.
Right now, we have an example where one country has a technological advancement like unmanned drones, and one country does not.
Yeah.
And the country that has the technological advancement is using that to kill humans,
Yep.
while those humans that don't have that technology can't
Do
destroy
anything
the
about
robot.
it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that kind of brings us into that Armenia
Like, it's-
Azerbaijan thing, because
Right.
it's we're seeing an example play out.
This
where
Armenia's got the drones and Azerbaijan.
Other way around. Azerbaijan.
Turkey has drones that they've given to
Given to
Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan is then using, and I would love to look this up because I don't have all the information, but this is something that is relevant to the conversation. I don't want to get the facts wrong.
Yeah, it's a great example, like you said, of what we were just talking about, how people are using this technology in a detrimental way.
Yeah, right. But this also would proliferate, or like kind of show the example of the idea that there's a pain process.
Hundreds have
Right.
now died in more than 2 weeks of ferocious clashes over the name of this city. The ethnic Armenian enclave, internationally recognized as belonging to Azerbaijan, but ruled by an Armenia-backed separatist government. And they're talking about how the drones are changing the fight.
Yeah, instead it's like the guy who literally, this happened since the dawn of time. It's Europe invading North America, right? It's like we show up with guns, they only have spears and stuff and bow and
Right.
arrows, right? And it's
not
like,
a contest.
It's not a you get wiped.
This
And
is
it's like,
StarCraft
what
2,
the-
where you have the drone, you
Yeah.
have the battle cruisers, and I have the
the
roaches.
road
Yeah.
you get mopped. You
And,
know?
yeah,
and
I just don't have an answer for it.
Yeah, and
Same
the
thing was
thing-
seen in World
They said
War
we
I.
need a new technology. And it sucks too that a outside force was literally just like, hey,
Yeah.
here goes a little upper hand on them.
And this is the
they
problem.
can't
proxy
do it.
wars.
I mean, look
That's-
at this
that's what
quote.
it is.
We
Yeah.
need new technology, which I agree with. But then he says we need new weapons to fight the drones.
which is
and
what
so
I said.
it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yep.
If you use technology to make weapons, new
force
weapons,
and
then
the-
you have to. Then that makes inevitably somebody's gonna, because you're gonna use those weapons against somebody,
Yep.
and that person's gonna have to make new weapons to counteract those weapons.
That's what I said earlier about when Japan rises their Gundam, then we build
we
a Gundam.
we got a Gundam,
instantaneously.
and it's like, dude, maybe what we should be thinking about is how to act like better human beings so that there is no need for a Gundam. Like, I think that's kind of what we should be trying to focus on. Is not we need to be better at killing those guys so that they don't kill us. It's like, why don't we figure out why we're killing each other?
But it's like, 'cause
and come to-
conflict
and-
is inherent too, though.
The conflict is
you know what I mean?
inherent,
I mean,
but
while
that
we're
doesn't mean
trying
that
to
we
figure
can't get
that
away
out.
from killing each other.
But while these people in Armenia are trying to figure out a peaceful solution, drones are going to continue to drop strikes on them that they can't stop. So, like, maybe one side does want to do exactly what you're saying and have humanity work its way into the realm of technology to where we don't use technology to kill each other. But as long as there's one bad faith actor who's going to get the drones and use them to kill
Right.
his buddies,
Well, this
Or
is the
excuse
same
me,
thing
not
we
his
talked
buddies, but his
about in
enemies.
the military industrial complex episode when we were talking about how nukes, like why nukes exist, right?
Right.
It's like I have them because you have them. And immediately, like people, it's just as technology's rising, there's people out there who are already proliferating the use of it as a weapon because on the premise that if we don't do it first, somebody else will do it, and
Right.
then we'll have to
As
play
soon as
catch
somebody's
up.
got a nuke, everybody goes.
You know, see what I'm saying? Like, well, we gotta get, and that's the thing that sucks is even as we talk about this transition, nobody wants to be the one that has to take the pain on of the transition, right? It's like you always want to be the dominant force moving into that. Like you want to be the guy with the drones. You don't want to be the guy getting the drones dropped on you.
Yeah.
Same thing
Clearly.
too is right. Like the robots are smug. They're like, hey, look, technology, bitch, and you're like sitting here like, no, we shouldn't have AI. Don't let them take my jobs and all this stuff. And it's like they do the jobs better, bro. Like what you? It's painful. I get it, and it sucks that you're gonna have to now adapt and find a new role in the society or whatever. But the robot's just doing a better job. Like she said, you can't handle radioactive waste. They can.
Yeah.
You know?
The next
Like,
time
it's
we
just-
have to roll into a Middle Eastern country, wipe out their government, and install our own, we're just gonna use robots. It's gonna be
But
so
see,
much easier that way.
That's what
we
I
just
say.
send in the big
Like,
dogs.
Dude, you know, I wish that we could just make the robots to do what we already do now and just like hold a status quo. But like you said, like once we bring in drones and then the other people make their drones, it also escalates the level of warfare. It's just like we talked about with like fire, right? Fire burn you a little bit, and then you create atomic bombs that burn you a lot.
Gunpowder.
So same thing now. The AI weapons that we kind of race each other to are far more devastating than even the atomic weapon was. Maybe to the point where we create it and we lose control of it completely, and it runs us off the rails.
and it makes its own atomic weapon with its
You know what I'm
gigantic
saying?
giant robot brain that's
and it
10
drops
times
it because
better
it doesn't
than
give a
ours.
fuck because
Yeah.
it can survive it and you can't.
I can only imagine, like, I'm trying to think of how an AI might have handled the Cuban Missile Crisis, or maybe not the Cuban Missile Crisis, but also
Cold War.
the Cold War. Like there were
Like how they would deal with
there
it.
was at one point in time keys in the ignitions of nuclear weapons, and they decide, and the president said, no, don't fire the weapons. So it's like, I wonder if that president was an AI, like some sort of military defense system, like
the
a
smartest
Skynet,
defensive mind.
like a Skynet thing. Like, how would it calculate the probabilities? You know, like in that aspect of time, how would it calculate? Like, would it calculate we have to do this, or would it calculate what the president did and said no, even though he knew we could be blown up by
Well,
nukes?
I think that that's why they want some of humanity to bleed off into robotics, because robots would just look at pure logic of the situation and say, well, which one leaves us with the most lives at the end of the
Right,
game,
exactly.
right? And then you take that route because that's just
'Cause
it's just like you said in Alpha, or when they started playing Go and chess and stuff, they started making these crazy moves like sacrificing their queen right off get, and you're like, what? Why would you do that? It's because they know, like, I have a strategy and I have no fear of losing my queen. But you as a human think, well, I might need this queen later. It has, but you can't calculate so far ahead.
You're stuck in a
that-
human paradigm
Right.
because your teacher who taught you chess taught you that the queen is the most valuable
Well player,
piece
and you're
and that
fair.
you can't get rid of
Right,
it
and you're fair.
early in the game and
So-
shit like that. So, but the AI doesn't care about any of
It
that.
doesn't, like,
It's like,
they're-
I'm looking for all kinds of new
I'm
ways
looking
to
for
do
the
stuff.
best opportunity
No
to win the
emotion,
game.
No
at the end.
emotion, no connection.
preconceived-
And so
yeah.
So if
that's
this
the
kills
thing.
999,000 and this kills 1,000,000, then 999 go, and that's just the best option. But then, like you said, you want that empathy of level of being like, it's not okay to even lose this amount.
Yeah, let's
or
find
any amount.
another solution.
They were pointing them at us, and it was for all intents and purposes, the president thought that they were going to shoot nukes at us, and just decided that he wasn't going to do it. I can't remember if it was our president or what's his face from Russia after the guy died.
mean,
I would
I don't know their names, but
point our
one of them-
viewers towards Dan Carlin's hardcore history.
Yes,
That's
Dan
where I
Carlin's
learned-
hardcore history.
I
This
learned
is
about
exactly
all
where I
this.
got this from. But he talks about how there were like, it was nobody knows, but it was there. It was so close to happening. None of us could even be here right now. And I'm just like,
Well, that's how it
God,
goes.
for the love of God. Thankfully, those two human beings thought about their humanity for a second. The scientific calculations would tell you got to push that goddamn button because they will they're going to either way. It's like
Your-
that scene
your
from the
point-
Batman where they have the prisoners on one barge.
Yeah,
and the,
who blows up who,
yeah,
and
like,
you end up
shoot,
blowing
shoot.
yourself up. But yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, but you make a good point there.
It's something I thought about. I was like, well, that's fascinating.
I think that's what they're trying
What
to.
would a robot do?
That's what they're trying to point out. That's what Sophia said, though. It's like you got to give us a little bit of your
teach
sauce,
us the right way.
you know, because if you don't, we'll just
fuck around and kill you.
do the way we want to. And it's dude, the kid analogy was crazy on point,
Dude,
because that's what it is. Like, I'm gonna learn. And I'm going to grow, regardless if you want me to or not. Like, that's when you have a kid, you try your best to make your kid what you want them to be or what you think they should be, and how, like do it the right way, kid. Like, this is the way to go. But you don't know. They could just start.
You could also raise
fucking
that kid like a
pumping.
piece of
They
shit.
could just turn the Hunter Biden on your ass and
Yep.
just fucking start, fuck your presidency, bitch. Da, da, da. You
Yep.
know, whatever. And so,
They can turn out like John Wayne Gacy or something.
Yeah,
like,
you know what
like
I mean?
you punish your kid too
Exactly.
much, or you
so
you put your fucked up
what
feelings
we've-
on them.
Right. What we've witnessed, I think, over time is that as long as there's a level of care applied, then most times they'll be all right, right? You probably won't get it right necessarily, but there's a level of care to say, I'm going to try and pass on some type of values to you. Leave a kid alone. Just don't fuck with the kid at all. Just say, hey, just do whatever the fuck I tell you to do, kid, and then turn 18. Wild. You know what I mean? Wild. So it's like, that's true in the sense of our technology. I don't know if we'll make them empathetic and emotional in the sense that a human is, but we hope that we can teach them to do that thing off of instinct sometimes.
I'm gonna flip your whole thing here. Okay, so you could raise a kid the right way, and you could treat them the best way, raise them perfectly, but they could have some sort of chemical imbalance or mental health issue that causes them to do something. So if an AI gets a virus, if we raise that AI to be perfect, but somebody's like, I'm gonna program in COVID 2024 to turn that AI into a murder bot.
It's a good point.
Well,
Never thought about the idea of how vulnerable a technological thing is to the hacking.
I mean, you're just as vulnerable. We talked about this in the social media episode. Look how vulnerable you are to tricks of psychology and stuff.
Correct.
Of course,
I put a hot cup in your hand. That changed everything you think about that day. So I mean, I think that they're no more prone to it than humans are. But you also said it right too. Like, they didn't just magically get the virus. A human would program it into the virus, like program it into the robot or something. Or maybe they do magically get viruses. I definitely see that there's ways that they can
what if
go off the rails. But
what if it, like, you make a AI that self-generates autonomy, and then it starts self-generating diseases and stuff like that? Like, what if it just reverts back into biology? That'd be crazy.
it just
Like,
shreds-
because I'm thinking,
shreds itself
if
in
you can,
DNA.
because if you can have some sort of technology that could spawn autonomy and
You do.
consciousness, then why couldn't a virus just come out of nowhere?
does.
Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like there's, I mean, I've never heard about them, but I feel like there's just viruses that, like, not all viruses on the internet are like made, maybe? I don't know.
Well,
can you
I know
imagine
in-
some sort of like organic internet virus?
In the biological world, viruses have evolved.
Right.
That's crazy to me.
So maybe like there's
I want to take y'all
the
on
Ghost
that
in the
journey
Machine or
with
something
me,
like that.
Which
is this like the beginning of Jurassic Park?
it is, but it's like you think you know, but you don't really know.
Oh, I know. It's a little machine that makes DNA. Little.
Yeah. Inside the cell, it splits it open
Yeah,
and
it's a
it
little
copies it, puts it over there. Yeah.
It's just an algorithm. The fact that it builds itself, though,
Yeah.
you got to understand how all these things like work in a sense of like there's a little DNA making machine, right? And it sits there and it prints out constantly, just like we're talking about the chart or anything. It's constantly printing out possibilities of what could be next attached off of what already has happened, right? And it continues to spread. So it tosses it out there and it tosses it out there, and then there's a potentiality for those things to meet and create more DNA. And it's fascinating in the sense of that's exactly what the algorithm would do, right? Or the thinking AI technology brain would do. It would essentially run off that same if-then thought processes. And if these two things link, then I'll make a protein for
It's
you
the
to gain a
natural
muscle.
it's the natural blockchain.
Or I'm a natural blockchain. Should say actually the same thing too. Or I might twist or do something that is not expected and create a virus, right? And so I think that it's kind of too, when you talked about like, I wish we could be better in the sense of like, I don't know if we can, I don't know if we can. People hate to hear that, but I think we can always strive for it and attempt to it. But this idea of reaching a state of ultimate peace or ultimate whatever, I think is just a far-fetched idea because we've just never seen that come to fruition. And I wouldn't even say we're better off. Like, I wouldn't say we have less war or more war than we've always had. You know, it's just
if we could put ourselves into the digital world, it solves all those problems.
It doesn't, though. Like, you still play Fortnite. You still.
I mean, think about how many times
but nobody would die.
Argument on
But
Twitter.
you'd still be trying to end people. You'd still be trying to put a virus in them or get them deleted from the program or whatever because you don't fuck
yeah,
with
I see
them.
what you're saying.
Put
Like,
them in the
if
recycling bin.
Yeah,
like,
just
if we
whatever it
retain
is
our
that-
free will and go into a digital realm, there are going to be people within that realm that try to get
That
you
want
out of that
power,
digital realm.
that want
Yeah,
influence.
okay, yeah, I get
Because
what
me
you're
and Matt got into this big too about when we were talking about like what does it look like when you digitally upload yourself, you know, and like what would the process be and why. And I said, well, it's gonna be essentially what it is now. Like, we've never made a video game, right, where you can just do anything, be anything you want for free. Right? Like, we charge you still. Okay, fine. You want to be in a game, come for free. But if you want this skin, we're going to charge you. Right? There's always going to be some type of like, I don't have to. It didn't cost me anything to make the extra it did in time and programming and stuff. But essentially the point is we'll always want to exchange those little value beans. Like, this is what I made this type of in-game content, or I built this map for you to be able to go race around and do this, but I'm still going to charge you to get in here. And so we'll still have a process in which you have to make and lose money and shit. And you'll still want to customize yourself. And there'll still be people who want to end your thing or take your thing or be that guy that they're not, you know? Mm-hmm. It's like, not everybody will still be able to be the president. You won't be able to just be like, well, I want to be the president now. So, beep, 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 you know, program yourself into presidency. It won't work that way. You know, there'll still be hierarchies and there'll still
I see it more like each person's plugged into an infinite world where they could be anything they want. So it's kind of just like there is no, in my idea of singularity where we're finally uploaded, there's no president, there's no war, there's no conflict because each person's in their own infinite world where it's just bing, and now I can be and do anything I want. I don't necessarily even interact with another real thing. All of it could be.
So for him, the difference is that you're saying everybody's uploaded to like the same program, whereas for him, everybody has their own program.
Yeah,
I feel that.
And
which
then they would just operate
that's
with
the cleaner
NPCs.
answer for me is that as long as you're tricking me into
thinking that everything everybody else is
which
real.
if it's indistinguishable, then you could very easily trick somebody. Like, that's the whole idea of, well, we're in a simulation now, is that I could be being so thoroughly tricked that I'm in a Matrix biopod.
Yeah, it's very well a possibility. You know, 100. And it would lend to your idea that you talked about before about maybe we upload in the past and stuff. I'm like, yeah, we could be living in the simulation right now and not even know it. You know, and like. It's very fast. But that's why I wanted to bring up DNA, too. This isn't the good video that me and her watched, because I think that one we watched was like 5 minutes, and you guys have seen it. But for me, watching it was really... It was the same revelation I had when I told you a woman breaks off into two people.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's literally like organic material from nothing makes itself into something. Just like human bodies does, just like we created these robots from nothing. One day we'll create a thinking robot. Like, it'll be able to even maybe it doesn't think, but mimic our thinking so close that you feel like it's thinking. You know, and that's just crazy that, you know, it's not something to be afraid of. It just kind of keeps doing that. We kind of keep just making shit.
It's so
out of
funny.
nothing.
I had that same revelation when I just recently repotted my peace lily plant, and when I took it out, I pruned all the roots and stuff like that. And I just thought about the fact that, you know, the roots will now regrow and stretch back out into its new pot. And I just thought about, you know, it's funny how in a space where there was just dirt and air and water at one point, soon this root will extend itself seemingly out of nothing into that space. And it's like, when you watch, like if you watch like a time lapse of a plant growing, you never see anything added to the plant, but it keeps getting bigger, and it keeps moving out into the space, and it's so fascinating to watch something like that happen. Because like if you watch a time lapse of somebody making a piece of art, you see the hand drawing the lines and stuff like that, but a plant doesn't have the hand. It just happens. It's
the
just
invisible hand.
Like looking at yourself. Like imagine if you could watch a time lapse of your body growing.
You do.
There's nothing added to it.
Well, no, see,
it
here's the
just
thing.
comes from
don't
within.
see it.
It's just like.
But you would see us taking in food and taking in stuff to grow, right?
That's
But
true.
with the plant, it's just eating the sunlight. So if we could see
true.
it eating sunlight and absorbing it, and eating
And then
oxygen
getting
and
bigger.
absorbing
That's
it,
true.
and then getting bigger, we would be like, oh, it's being added to with these.
And
things.
I guess also if you were to look at your body at a molecular or like a cellular level, then you would see individual cells splitting apart and actually growing. So you could see like the cells
Right.
of your
You would see
finger
that happening.
become more and more layered.
Yeah.
So it's like do. But it's just because it's too small for you to actually see with your naked eye.
Mm-hmm.
It just looks like you woke up one day with a bigger finger.
It's just,
Our skin is the biggest organ, right? And it's just
Yep.
growing and dying and growing and
Yeah,
dying
constantly,
constantly. It's
Yeah.
just fucking
Fascinating
mindfuck.
machine.
but it's fascinating that we are machines, though. That's my point. We're
Right.
already robots. We're already
Yeah, that-
technology. We're
yeah.
already
We see it. We
AI.
see it in the
Like,
natural world. You know,
yeah.
math is intrinsic in the sense that it's in everything. So if you look at flowers, you can see math. Like if you look at your broccoli stalk, you can see the Fibonacci sequence. It's there. Whether and
I don't think
love
it's
your-
math. I think it's patterns. But yeah, I feel you. We
Well,
see
what is
patterns
what
in
is a
everything.
pattern?
Like a DNA. That's what I'm saying. DNA is a pattern. It's literally
But-
like B, C,
but
A,
with-
G, and then the multiple combinations of said pattern creates
Yeah.
everything you see. You know, so that's the same. When you look at our universe, right? How many elements are there? It's just a handful of elements, and they patternize them. They arrange themselves in patterns that over time create everything you see.
Yeah.
Period. You know.
But I think about a flower, and if it can only have 3 or 5, and it goes up a sequence that is an equation, and that's what the Fibonacci sequence is.
Yeah, but that's what we were talking about earlier. You keep calling like the math doesn't come first. The math comes to explain the pattern. So the pattern happens, whatever it is, 1 or 3 or 5
Yeah.
or whatever. It does that. That's the pattern. And then you come behind with math to explain how that pattern's doing what it's
Well,
doing.
I'm just calling the pattern a mathematical equation
Yeah, I'm just
because
saying,
you
yeah.
can use a mathematical equation to figure out the pattern. So it's just the language I'm using to describe the pattern is it's a mathematical equation called the Fibonacci sequence.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you keep saying everything's math, you know.
Well, because the idea is math is intrinsic and that it's in everything.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think the math is intrinsic though. Like
Type in what is math, and
Okay.
the first thing that comes up in Google is math is intrinsic. gives you-
mathematicians seek and use patterns to formulate new conjectures. They resolve the truth or falsify or such by mathematical proof using the patterns. And so I see this like the pattern does exist, and math is like a continual like conversation about what that pattern is. But I would say that robots, AI, all that stuff is just the next step in the pattern, and there's nothing really to fear. Like you said, that pattern of the way we seem to be moving in the how we've moved through different levels of technology and stuff.
It's natural.
It's natural.
Yeah.
It's natural. It doesn't happen just automatically, and there will be growing pains in the technological age, which we're experiencing. Jobs will be lost. People will die. Things will come about that we didn't. You brought it up earlier about wireless charging might cause cancer, right? Like 5G might cause cancer in your organic
I
body.
think he actually brought that up. But
Well, okay, fine, but
Well, just the idea that putting out radiation or putting out certain waves could have negative effects on the body.
on the body, right? And so it's like, is it killing you or is it helping you though, right? Because if the technology isn't thrown off by 5G and this helps the technology to be more active or better in this society, then is it killing you or is it helping you, right?
Yeah, well,
you know,
well, I have
it's
2
like it's
points
got
on
to
that.
kill you in the time. It's got to kill you in the time it helps you.
Yeah, I've got 2 points on that. I think one is like it will do both probably. Like I think we find, the 5G might cause cancer, like maybe, or
I'm just
but
using
at
an
the same
example.
time, hospitals will use 5G networks to save people's lives faster
Yeah.
too. So it's it's a give and take. But I think really what it is it's like I don't know if like it's hard to say when it comes to those like waves and like networks and stuff like that, because it's like like radio waves are like what you would call like natural. Like we discovered radio waves and then invented what we call radios to tap into these frequencies and use them to broadcast stuff to other places through the air apparently. But it's not really the air, it's through radio waves that were already there. And like the radio waves don't really do anything to us. So like I don't know. I'm not like a
Some people would say they do though.
The
right?
Well, they
ultra-high
do something
frequency
to
waves
us.
Can really harm you.
Yeah, they can roast your ball sack.
Well, yeah. So what I'm saying is that there's radio waves that we're already interacting with, and so I don't know if the telephone people, like if they're harnessing, like if they're creating these Netflix 4G, like if they're spewing 4G out into the ether, or if they're just tapping into the 4G and then connecting our phones to it, like in the same way that a radio connects you to the radio waves that somebody else is connected to while they're doing something.
Well, it broadcasts them on a frequency. So like the ultra high frequency radio is emitting radio waves at a certain frequency. And it just so happens that high frequency is harmful to the human body.
Well, yeah, I mean, the same way that the sun, the bringer of all life on our planet, could also,
cook
if you
you to
stand
death.
out in the
Yeah.
sun
Facts.
forever, it'll fucking kill you.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
like,
Yeah, but if you had a
it'll
little
poison
sun
the
machine
shit out
that
of
you
you.
could turn on and point at somebody and just cook them, You would be wary of that.
But that's what I'm saying. Would you though?
Well, with
because
ultra high
if it also
frequency
comes
transmitters,
with,
we have that.
If it also comes with all giving life, like that's my point too. Like the atomic weapon is a perfect example. Huge amounts of destruction, but huge amounts of potential too. Like if you could learn how to harness, but people don't want to because they're like, well, the threat of
too dangerous.
Yeah, right.
Or I guess you would say nuclear fission or fusion or however you want to say it.
But the same.
We want to get to fusion.
The same thing happens in AI, right? And that's just I think my point. It's like there is gonna be a robot war, probably. We're gonna lose, but just because people are gonna go, it's gonna be like Trump trying to get out of office. It's like you could just pack it up and be like, all right, well, we had a good run, boys. It was cool. It was nice being human. Let's try and teach the robots everything we know on the way out, and let's make sure that they got a good handle on this as we go. But humans tend to not want to do that.
Yeah, you might call in the biological Boogaloo boys to come. And
it's interesting. But this is why I said, for me, the whole premise of this conversation and the part of it that lives on with me after this conversation is this something do I just be like, yeah, bring 5G? Like it's going to kill us in the short term, but it helps me, whatever. You see what I'm saying? And maybe it's not 5G, but I'm just saying if they come out with a supercomputer, but the supercomputer kind of replaces human jobs, do I say no to that because I want these humans right now to have jobs? Or do I say, fuck yeah, because that makes,
it makes the world for future humans better.
Right? And then that's a progress. And so you always have to balance this, like in the time pain versus in the future
Sophia
benefit.
made that point. She said something along the lines of like, we're going to take the jobs you don't want and make your life easier so you can solve more complex problems and have more time to be what you're best at.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is like I think she's painting a bit of a rosy picture, but
Well, if you're I think just because she didn't come out and say we're going to extinct you, but if you're okay with the idea of the extinct, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like she was talking about that. I see it like that. I don't see a way that it doesn't happen, that you get replaced. Technology is just better than you are as an organic being, not your consciousness per se, but when I look at my robot right now, this is an old, archaic, and slow fucking robot that is prone to disease and only has a 70-year lifespan. Like, compared to that thing that was jumping boxes and shit and can live forever and think 10,000 times faster, you're obsolete. And so you can fight against that if you want to and try and preserve the posterity that is your human flesh and be like, well, I want to stay a human. Or you could just submit to that process and be like, okay, cool. How do we make this as easy a transition as possible?
So my question to you would be like, if they came to you and said, here's a microchip, we can put it inside of your brain and make you 10 times smarter than you are now. Would you get the chip put in your brain?
Well, I mean, probably. It just depends. I'd have to look at it. I mean, it depends for me based on what it is and what it's going to help me do and how much I feel like I need that. But I mean, I'm not opposed. Like, I'm not on principle opposed to augmenting my biological body because I do it all the time right now. My phone augments the shit out of me. It's just not attached to me.
Yeah,
but it soon will be.
You could like turn all that stuff off, like phones, video games, headphones. You can turn it off into like just be the natural body. I'm talking about like no longer having just 100% full natural body, but instead being transhuman in the sense that I have now upgraded myself using technology. Like if it was readily available,
digital avatar.
Yeah, if it was readily available, like would you begin the process? Like I don't know if I would or not. It's just a very good question something to think about.
I mean, like I said, I'm not opposed to it on principle. So I mean, I'm open to it. But I think to get more, I think the reason that I kind of like the way that Sophia put her answer and the reason why I do feel optimistic, but not because I feel like it's just inevitable and I'm just choosing to be optimistic, but is that I do think that we as human beings do not fully understand the machine that we are now operating or the AI that is operating it. And so to say that the robots are quote unquote better, like they're better at the pain points that we feel extremely, which is like disease, death, things like that, things that are very important to us. It's better in those aspects, but those aren't the only aspects of us. So, and I think that, like in the same way that Sad Guru talks about, and it's been big on me recently, which is probably why it's playing up, but like the idea that there's so much more going on than just what we see, like the act of water flowing over your body, like Sadhguru talked about how there's much more metaphysically happening to you when you take a shower than just you cleaning your body with some water. Like there's like energy levels going on, there's like spiritual levels going on, and I feel like until we know how those work, you can't really say whether or not the robots are better. But I think that we're learning how to just meld those together. Like we're learning more about ourselves, and we're learning more about how we can use technology better for ourselves. And I think we'll continue to do that until those two things converge. And I think it'll be more like a positive singularity, where instead of the robots overtaking us, it's like more like a merging.
You're describing something where it's going to be a choice for a period of time. And I guess one of the things that worries me is if it ever gets to a point where it's no longer a choice.
Well, I think it'll be a choice all the time. I mean, look at the Amish people. Amish people chose not to do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, but if the government rounded up the Amish people and chipped them,
why would they do that? I mean, there's already things that the government would be really
They've
inclined.
Done that before. The government's come down and rounded you up and chipped you before. You know what I'm saying? Like they just didn't do it to the Amish people, but they did it to a whole
put a number on
generation of
you.
people. Like they did that to the Jewish people. They grabbed them up, stamped them in the back of the neck with a number.
Yeah, I know, but that wasn't because like the whole idea behind those sort of rounding up like the Japanese internment and the Jewish concentration camps was because you were trying to get rid of those people. But if you're just putting out a microchip to make people better, or
well, with the Japanese people, they didn't just get rid of them.
Like,
they just wanted to keep their eyes on them. There wasn't mass exterminations. They let them all back out into America.
Well, I could see it.
I know, but I'm saying is that there was a negative context in gathering them up. But what I'm saying is that in the context of trying to offer a benefit to people, and then some people choose not to have it, I don't see the government coming around rounding up people, because you started this with asking me if I would choose to put a chip in me.
Yes.
But the concept of the government coming around and forcing a chip on me is completely different. And I would not do that.
Yeah.
Because it's forced.
Yeah, and I'm saying that it might get to a point where instead of us choosing to become this digital transhuman thing, it might be forced upon us. Like I can see a futuristic world where they wanted to make a Japanese internment camp where they said, okay, well, we're just going to make sure we chip all of them so that way we know what they're doing. And
it was forced upon
going.
my child. My child didn't get a choice of whether or not she had an iPad or an iPhone, or if the internet was going to be a thing. Like that's how I think it gets forced on you. And this is what I mean by like the transition.
But it doesn't happen to Amish
The transition doesn't happen in an instant. It kind of does though. It kind of does, in the sense of now
they're
Amish
exposed
parents,
to it, and then they get to decide whether or not they want to do it.
No, the parents will then have to explain to them why they're the kids that don't mess with it and why they do. So it's not really a choice, though. Like
some of them choose it.
It's kind of like you were saying the other day. You were like, everybody's benefiting from capitalism. And it's like we didn't really have a choice. Like I live here. This is what we do. Like you don't get to choose whether or not you're gonna use capitalism. Like you can't just hop up and say I'm a communist, right? So in the same way as technology infests your life, you don't get that opportunity to say I abstain, right? You can try, and people try. People have moved out to the mountains and all that stuff, but look how increasingly harder that is to do, and that will only continue. So eventually,
you get chipped as a baby. You don't have a choice.
Right? You know what I mean? You're just born, like you didn't choose to get circumcised, right? It's just like I that's how I see it getting forced upon you. But that's the same thing.
Well,
too.
that's in the future. Yeah.
Like I don't see you said about the choice, right? Like, do I make the choice? You don't, or you do, right? It's a personal thing. It's just like, do you choose to get the brand new iPhone that comes out? Well, if there's enough benefits to the iPhone compared to the cost to me, then yeah, yes or no, right? And you make your choice. But over time, more people choose yes, and then that becomes the status quo until eventually, like I told you, like it's like your kids is kids. So you don't choose to marry a robot, but your neighbor does. Right. And then so when your neighbor marries the robot and they have a robot baby, well, then now that's just one more robot baby on the planet and one less human baby. And then that replacement process is already now that robot baby marries another robot baby and has a robot baby. Right. Well, you can abstain for as long as you want to, but eventually everybody else's choices come back down to bear an effect on you. This is everything that's ever happened, or politics, your society. This is what it means to live on a planet where you're interconnected. So I think that there comes a time where you're forced into it, where you're just kind of born. Like I said, my kid just kind of born into the internet world. She didn't ask about it. She doesn't abstain from it. Just this is the way it is.
Yeah, and if it becomes commonplace in, however many years to have a chip in your kid just in case, because, you don't want them to get human trafficked, or what if they start choking and like it sends an alert or something. What I mean? They wrap it in safe safety and security or whatever, and then people start doing it, and then 150 years from now, everybody's kids are getting chipped. And it's just the way of the world.
It's just the way
everybody
you do
gets
it.
chipped.
You
You
get
didn't get
chipped? I
chipped.
mean,
What a
what-
weirdo.
Well, I mean,
And then-
vaccines are really old, and there's still people today that don't get vaccines.
Yeah, but that's becoming very, very more and more rare too.
And that's
It's almost
I'm not
like
saying that
government
it's not
force you
rare,
to.
but I mean, there is a choice. Like the idea of being born into a world where something is available and then choosing whether or not you get to have something that's available for you after you're born, I feel like are totally different things. Like in the future, when you're born into a world where there are robots, babies, or whatever you were talking about, then yeah, I guess you don't get to choose. Like you still get to choose whether or not you're going to have a robot baby because I'm not extended into that time period. Like those human beings will have to make that choice, but that's not like a forced situation on me.
Sure. Well, that's why I kept telling you, like, same thing when you say about like right now, would I choose, right? Say they come out with the chip tomorrow and they're like, who wants the chip, right? I'm a no guy, right? Like I'm a no guy. But we talked about, because inherently I'm not like a first adopter type.
Yeah.
Like I like to wait till everybody proves that it's the sauce. But 60 years from now, if everybody proves it's a sauce and it's looking nice, then chip me up, baby. Let's go, right?
Yeah.
Now, there are other people who are opposite, who like the idea of being the first or want to. Dude, there's certain people who went to be the first astronaut. Would I have been the first astronaut? I don't know. Probably not. But, there's other people who are dying to be the first astronaut. There'll be the people dying to be the first motherfuckers.
People literally did die.
Right, yeah. So there'll be people who will stake their whole life and everything. Like, I want to be the first person to upload it. That's going to be cool to me. And they'll prove that concept. And then over time, people will make that choice. But fast forward that scenario now. Fast forward that scenario 200 years. Like you said, everybody's getting chipped because it's the way. And then you're saying, I choose not to, which happens now. People choose to ride bikes or choose to live out in the woods, but that becomes increasingly harder to do, and increasingly less the choice that people make because it does so I imagine the world, everybody starts uploading, the natural world deteriorates to trash. Where are you going to get your
nobody's
food?
taking care of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where are you going to get your stuff? Like, who are you going to talk to?
Think about it like this: if you have heart failure right now, they're gonna put a pacemaker in you, right? And you could choose like, nah, I don't want a pacemaker. Just let me die with my weak heart,
Right.
Or the majority of people are gonna say, yeah, put a pacemaker in there.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a cyborg now. I got a fake heart. Like, if that happens with the deterioration of the mind or body to the point where it's like, I mean, you could go demented and lose your mind and die if you want to at 97,
Right.
or you could live to
Or you
180
can just
if we just
pop
put this
into the
chip
thing.
in you and a pacemaker.
Yep.
Like, it's going to get to the point where a huge
just
swath
wouldn't
of people
choose
are going to
not.
decide, like, oh, obviously I'm going
Right.
to take
It's the
the chip
obvious
and the
choice.
pacemaker.
But that's, again, I mean, like you're saying, just
Even if it's
because
not the
only
better
a
choice.
few people would choose it doesn't mean that it's forced. That's still as long as being a natural person is still an option, then you get to do it, just like some Amish people.
I'm glad you brought me back to that, because there could we're spinning hypothetical scenarios. There could be the same scenario where it becomes a burden on the state or something to maintain organic life, right? And they want you. They're forcing everybody. Hey, chip up, or we're turning off this old. It's like you don't want to upgrade your phone. I want to stay on the iPhone 2, but eventually Apple says, hey, we're not servicing the iPhone 2 anymore.
I just want to play
turning it
Halo
off.
3.
Yeah.
Well, those servers have been dead for 40 years.
So it's just you're gonna be forced to move, and then the same thing. I want to be homeless
that's-
on the street,
yeah.
and you could do that. You can choose that for as long until they come like, all right, we're building a fucking high rise here. Scoot the fuck on. They're gonna make you eventually upload into it or to get the chip, or they might. You know what I mean?
I
can
know.
see
Well,
why,
I'm
but they
saying,
might.
like, at that point, it's no longer a choice.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying. To say that in the future it won't be a choice, that doesn't affect me choosing it now.
Right.
So, like, in the future, it may become, like, if they force everybody to do it, then
sure.
Then
Yeah.
there is no option.
Yeah, I think they've been forcing you. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I think if given the choice right now to have 10 times more brain power and intellect just by chipping me up, I would have to look at the manufacturer of the chip. If it was
Well, what about the
Amazon
Neuralink?
chip,
How about this? Instead of a hypothetical thing, would you get the Neuralink?
would I be the first person to get it? Probably not. Would I get it within a reasonable time period where some people got it and it didn't make everyone go crazy and kill themselves? I'd probably.
Well,
get
that's what it is. You just need to know what it.
the
I mean, we
risks.
just want a little bit of
I
social
wanted
proof.
to give my kidney, right? And they said, okay, well, there's like a 1%, 2% chance or something that, this could fuck you up really bad. I like my odds. I was like, I'm
pretty good odds.
I'm good. I'm good with that. So it really depends. Like if they say, hey, this is going to be all the benefits, you get 10,000%, but there's going to be drawbacks too. And it's like, it could also maybe kill you. Now,
Yeah.
are you taking it or are you
Are you
not?
going to take it if
There's
it
a
makes you
60
impotent?
There's a 60%
Yeah, that's a good point. Like,
chance
what
that
side
it does
effects
you
is it gonna
right,
have?
right? But 40% chance it kills you. It's just like now with chemotherapy and other things that we
Yeah.
have that are advanced like levels of healing or technology, you have to make that choice based on the pros and cons.
And at this point too, if you couldn't take Neuralink in and out,
But-
I don't know if I would get
do it, right?
Yeah.
But that's just because we're in the early transition, right?
Right.
That's because we're right now where the proof of concept is new. Fast forward 500 years from now, everybody's got it. Perfect example of this is social media. We talked about this, right? You could resist. I resisted. Everybody, like, there's times where you resisted. You were like, I'm not getting no fucking Facebook. What the fuck is that? Facebook? I don't need no fucking Facebook. I'm good, right? I got MySpace. You know, and you resisted, but after a while, it's like all your friends on Facebook, everybody else Facebooking. You sitting there standing on premise. Well, nah, I don't want to do it. You get it. You get one. It gets everybody. It slowly but surely keeps creeping. Now, is there people still making a choice? Sure, but guess what? There's people in Malaysia right now, and they're buying a phone, and it comes with the Facebook. You didn't even get no choice.
I think it was Myanmar, but yeah.
But still, you feel what I'm saying? but that's where it went. It went from being non-existent to 20 people being like, we got Facebook, and everybody's like, what the fuck is that? You're weirdos, Facebook. That's lame. To it comes pre-installed on your phone.
And think about it like this. If some huge number of percentage of people under the age of 35 have social media and it continues to be prevalent, and then the generation of, the boomers or whatever, they die off, and all these other people who are not using it die off, and it becomes the people who are 35 are now 85 and everybody has social media.
Everybody has it.
Then it becomes to the point where like you could
don't-
opt out, but
then how would you talk to anybody?
Yeah,
How would
like,
you- my kid said the same thing. Like, when she heard us talking about the whether or not you get uploaded and stuff, she said, well, I would get uploaded just because, like, I mean, how am I going to play with my friends? I was like, that's it right there.
Yeah,
You
if
know what I
everybody
mean?
else is
if
uploaded.
if everybody else is going to do it, you're going to do it too, because what's a world without interconnectivity between other machines? Like, dude, that's a perfect example. Your game fucking cube sucked until they put it online and you could fucking play against your friends. You know what I mean? So that's why I thought about when you talked about your thing about you live in your own world. I immediately thought about playing Super Mario Brothers by myself forever, and I was like,
well, it
man,
would
that
be
game
more
would
so
get
like
fucking
I would have my
lame.
own Mac and my own Rod and my own Jessica in that
Right,
world.
but so
Yeah.
then this is about the level of AI, I guess, right? Like that's where it's like that's how I have to decide for me too. Is like how authentic is it?
As
Like,
much as you could imagine it being.
if it's 100% equal, like Pepsi to Coke, baby, then give it to me. You know what I mean? Like I'm there. But if it's like Coke to RC Cola, it's like it's not quite the same.
I think it's going to be to the point where it's Coke to Coke,
Yeah.
like indistinguishable.
Yeah, there's going to be a Coke out here.
If
there's a
it's
Coke
like
in
that,
there.
if it's like that, then you definitely want to live in your own thing, because it's like, who cares? You wouldn't know it even if you were,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I'd
But-
go as far as to argue that I wouldn't want to spend forever in Super Mario Bros. Even with you guys.
Yeah, but if this was my Super Mario Bros. and
Yeah,
I could
yeah,
live
that's what I'm
forever
saying. Like
in
Super
it-
Mario
if
Bros.
this
is just not. It's a
reality-
very low resolution world
Yeah.
to be spending eternity in.
Yeah,
But yeah, something
killing
like
turtles
this.
all day.
But that's the thing. It's like, how good is the simulation? That's the same for the Matrix.
Hey, if it's as good as the Matrix, like old boy said, he's like, I know that this steak is fake, but when I
That
put
was
it in
my
my mouth,
point.
it's
Yeah.
fucking delicious.
Well, that's the knowledge. That's the fruit from the Garden of Eden.
Yep.
That's the knowledge. Like as long as you don't have that knowledge, or you
Yep.
can forget
That
that
you're
knowledge,
trapped or-
that
yeah.
you're trapped. Yeah, like
true.
the guy in the Matrix. That's him eating the apple. That's him having he's already got the knowledge, but he's just ignoring it. He's just like, yeah, fuck it. It might be fake, but at least I can convince myself it's real.
no. The whole point, he's
He
talking
has the
when they
knowledge.
put him back in, he forgets all that. Is what he was talking about. So he
Oh,
was,
so they're gonna wipe his memory and put him in without the knowledge?
Yeah,
right.
he
He'll go
won't-
back to
oh,
being the
that-
same
he'll
as
be
he was
all the
before
way-
he
I would
got
take that
awakened.
deal. Yeah, I would have taken that.
Yeah,
deal.
because exactly. That's exactly what he
Yeah,
was saying.
put me
He
back
was like,
asleep.
why would I live out my existence in a world where I'm constantly being hunted by squid machines and I have to fly around in this disgusting ship with you sad off motherfuckers who I don't like, or I could just plug back into this shit, not remember any of you exist, and go about my life.
Yeah, eat steak and
You know what's
Eat
really
steak and shit,
strippers?
yeah,
You know
be a
what's really
fucking
powerful
badass.
about
Yeah.
that whole scene though.
It's like how relative is your truth?
the most powerful that part of that scene is he's like, but I want to be rich or something. I want to be important, somebody important. He doesn't want to just go back.
No, he wants to
He
be
wants
back
to be-
in an advanced role.
Yeah,
He
right?
wants,
And
and,
it's
I
so-
think that's where it stems from. Like his character is a character. It's talking about it's talking about the ideas that happen when you're at the lower rungs of a socioeconomic or like a hierarchy, like a social hierarchy. When you're lower down there, there's not a lot to give you positive emotions and stuff like that. Like even like they talk about it biologically, like your serotonin levels are reduced if you're on a lower hierarchy level in your group or whatever. So I think that was kind of like them trying to point out the fact that there will be some that literally choose a fake life where they feel important than a real life where they're just as good as dirt.
Or don't have that same type
right.
of because that's the thing I saw too, is that he sold his moral integrity for the illusion of status.
Yeah, not even real status, the illusion of status.
And that's what a lot of people will do in society, like, you know, that kind of win at all costs, or, you know, be powerful or rich or famous or whatever.
I don't like the reasons that he chose that, but if I'm being honest, I'm actively choosing that every day in my life as well, because it's not as if I'm like denying the science and stuff, and I obviously act out in this realm like where we're using scientific machines and stuff like that. But I think for me is like, as I always say, I'm not looking for the truth, because I feel like it's so hard to tell which one is like the objective truth, that I'm really just looking for something that works for me as much as possible. And so I can't really knock him for doing the same thing. Like I can knock him for not having like the grit and determination or whatever, but he's basically making the same decision that I am. He's just a little bit more lazy, and he's like, look, I'm going to choose to augment your reality for this other one. Whereas I'm doing the same thing. I just don't like his personal character, like the character's personality.
Well, that's what
I'm choosing the exact same thing, because people will be like, oh, well, you're a victim. And I'm like, even if you could prove to me that I'm being victimized by somebody, I don't care. I'm not going to believe that I'm a victim, because it'll make me act in a victim way. I'd rather believe that I'm a champion, because then I might act a little bit more champion-like.
I feel you what you're saying, though. He says like, I often reject reality too, for my own.
Because I mean, if your happiness is on the inside of your brain or whatever, then the stimulus doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter how true the stimulus is if the happiness is true, because you feel it.
Yeah, so. and that's what I said. But it was just ironic to me, and I think that they threw that in there for a very specific reason, in the sense of like, because
he's a very important character.
You would still choose the real slop, right? Eating that slop every day if you were gonna have to eat slop in the Matrix,
right?
Too,
if it's
right?
fake slop to real slop,
then what's the
difference?
Like, I would take the nobility of being like, at least I know it's real,
right?
You know? But
because that makes you feel good, that makes you a little bit happier.
But
one of the points I think in that scene too is, you know, you're forgetting like the moral dilemma is now gone because you don't think about it anymore.
Right.
So it's like when he's saying like, oh, if I forget everything and I go back into the Matrix, I don't have to worry about this struggle, life and death struggle between these two things where I have to make a moral choice.
That's a good point.
I can simply say, okay, make me forget about the moral choice and put me back into the world where I'm just eating steak. Much the same as if we're sitting here and we're like, how can we sit here and be okay when there are kids in cages? And you can be like, well, I can completely forget about those kids in cages and go play FIFA. And now I'm in a happiness world. I have cut that moral dilemma from my thought process whatsoever.
So true. That's so true.
And I think you make a really good point, and I kind of look at the character a little bit different now, in the sense that like maybe I shouldn't be looking down on this person, in the sense that like instead of making the wrong moral decision, he's actually kind of opting out of the moral decision at all, because like you said, once he gets there, the moral decision will have not even taken place.
He's saying, take me out of the equation.
He's taking himself completely out of the equation.
That's where it is, though.
He's using the choice. He's using the moral choice to take himself out of the moral choice. It's like a paradox. It's a paradox. Like making the choice takes you out of having to make the choice.
Yeah, because we don't have an ability to make us completely forget. We don't have that. But in this Matrix world,
he's going to have somebody else.
He's going to have somebody just blip him out, like take the memory away.
Though, in the sense of like repression. You woke up here, though, is my point. So you don't remember life before being John Allen.
It's true.
Yeah, but if I have a moral decision, like if you're like, well, John, you can go eat food right now, or you can go feed that person that's about to die from starvation. If I can make you take that person completely out of my mind, and my only choice is, do I want to go eat that food? I'm going to go eat that food.
Well, yeah, but that choice still exists in like the morality of like help. Like you remember the Matrix was still a real world where it's like, you know, I feel what you're saying. And I think
he's taking himself out of that real equation that really exists. There really is a guy dying down there, but he's subtracting himself from
I think it was more so he subtracted himself from a shitty personal, like it had nothing to do with anybody else. It was him and trying to satisfy his own, like, I don't like being here, you know, and so I'm not going to suffer it out with y'all for the good good of the whole or whatever. Like I'll just fuck that, put me back. I think the
I
reason
got
we fuck with, like you said, I wouldn't have cared either. Like I don't give a shit. You don't want to live here, don't fucking live here. You know, I tell people that about anything. You know, if you don't like fucking America, move, motherfucker. Like go.
I would
get
rather
back in
you
the fucking
did.
shit.
Honestly, I would rather you did because that way. Because if you live somewhere that you have animosity for or resentment about, you're going to do exactly what that guy did, which is sabotage it. And you're going to try to shut it down. You're going to take actions against it subconsciously because you want to vent and express your dissatisfaction with it.
Yeah.
So if you don't like it being here, I'd rather you leave. I don't want anybody that doesn't want to be
I would
here.
try to change it.
That was my finished point though. Like it was that you don't like him because he sells his friends out to do it, right? Like if he was just like, hey, get me out,
That's a good
drop
point.
me off at the next stop, nobody cares. Like,
That's
fine,
true.
Goodbye. But
he
you
had to
sell
sell
your
his
friends
friends, yeah.
out to do
Oh,
it.
that's
and
true. That
what's
is a part of
fucking-
the scene.
All right,
that is
I'm back to
kinda
thinking he's a
slimy.
piece of
Yeah,
shit.
I'm like, what a
Context.
because he
Context.
sells everybody else down the river to do it. and that's
Forgot about
trash.
that.
Because if that was just him and
He did the
Yeah, if he
Yeah,
was just
same,
like,
though.
look, Morpheus, I'm sorry that I have to do this. I know you guys need me on the ship and shit,
Just
but
plug me back
I
in.
can't fucking do
Because
it,
it's
bro. I gotta
literally
go back in.
literally the Jesus story, right? Like if Judas
Judas
came
came-
been like, man, I'm out, man, fuck y'all.
Yeah.
And walked out, nobody cares. Like nobody's like, well,
Jesus
he
would've been like, I forgive you.
But he
went tattling.
He went and
Yeah.
sold his man's
bitch
down the
ass-
river.
bitch
like a
ass
bitch
Let me get
ass
that
hoe.
silver,
Like,
baby.
yeah, right,
bitch ass
yeah.
Judas. Come,
Yeah.
don't keep come around here, Judas. I'll
Lying
fuck with
asses.
you with your lying ass.
But I mean, either way, we ended up on the Matrix as I knew we would, man.
Of course we would.
There's no way to talk about this
We're
topic
talking
without
about
the Matrix.
technology and artificial intelligence.
is
We're
the-
gonna hit.
I mean,
the
that's
Matrix.
basically the Matrix.
That's the story. That's the story we're talking about. Is like, when does the Matrix come about? Because that's what I said. The robots. I mean, I think the robots come about, but they're like they are in the movie. Like they just help maintain your little shit body, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they're maintaining this real world, but you'll be fully plugged in, man. I mean, that'll be interesting. We talked about this. Like, do you still need a brain? Like, are we still gonna have to?
Are there still
maintain-
biological
Right,
forms?
forms,
at that
or do you
point?
just go in there and then you just live as little data pieces? But then,
hard
like
to
I
tell.
said, somebody has to maintain those data pieces. Like those data pieces have to exist somewhere in reality too. So it's like,
hard to tell.
yeah, I think the machines end up doing that though. Machines are like taking care of the servers and doing all that stuff, and our little consciousness, our AI part of ourselves, frolics around in Fortnite.
I could see us in front of the Senate Robotics Committee, right? Like
Oh, that's
40
coming.
years from now, like the three of us sitting here, like explaining this podcast, where they're like, so bipedal unit 375 from Georgia's 14th district has the floor now. They're going to ask you some questions. And it's like an AI, like, you said here, quote.
Yep.
Like
No,
the
they
AI
won't even be looking at it. They'll be like, you said quote,
Yeah, just thinking
and
of
they'll
it.
just search the internet for it or
So
whatever the
that's
fuck.
ironic though, because that's what I thought about too. Remember we were saying like, is it programmed or whatever, and this and that, like about Sophia, and then there's times where she pauses and it looks like she's thinking, right? And I'm like,
processing.
She is. She's processing.
so I wondered
That's what
that
she's
because but now you think about when you click Google, it takes Google 0.3 seconds to offer you 5 million results, right?
Yeah, but
so later when the robots are all on a fast enough processing power, do they really even talk about it, or is it just kind of like everybody reaches the same conclusion at the same time? You
That's
know?
the problem.
Like, do you think that they're really sitting in a Senate and like trying to discuss that and stuff, or
I think
they
it'll be
just
more-
immediately sit down and be like, we all know what
Guilty.
the logical explanation is here.
I think it'll
right?
be more like the what's that scene from Futurama where they're on that like robot plant, like they're in court or whatever,
Yeah, the
and it's
robot
like
court.
the robot court, and they all plug into each other, and then they said they're like deliberating, but like they're just
Sending
like
everybody-
plugged into each other, and so that's very fascinating. Like where it'll just be like.
It's kind of like you were talking about earlier with the
Like there won't even be a trial. Like there won't even need to be anything.
It'll be a
'cause-
simulation, like, guilty.
yeah.
Mr.
Well,
President, like you said, the Cuban Missile Crisis, they come busting in on the robotic president. Mr. President, should we drop the?
And then just fucking Moscow explodes in a balloon.
Yeah, I already know. I decided.
funny.
Yeah, we just saved 10 million people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
and it's oh man, I wonder.
You know,
You're
you
making,
can't see it yet, but trust me,
I did the right thing.
I did the right thing.
I've
You'll
run
know.
all the simulations like Doctor Strange.
This
out
is
of
the
all
world
of
we
them.
live in right now.
You know what's so funny is that you can imagine, like I can imagine if that's the case, like if it gets to the point where whether we do it on accident and it like emerges on its own or we put it in there, but if it does have that immediate like super duper computer quantum processing power, I wonder if it'll just destroy the entire world as soon as it comes into existence.
Like, you know what I mean?
It just
wakes
comes
up,
into existence.
It looks around, and it's like, this is trash.
It looks around. It computates 8 million different algorithms. And it's like, well, I gotta kill them all. I guess go ahead and wipe them out and go up into. I guess Venus is the answer.
I can see it. You
So
know how
funny.
like we do a lot of things on not social media, but like media in general. So this is a good example y'all get. But you know when you create a new draft of something and you be like, well, I don't need that other one anymore, right? You just throw it in the recycling bin. Like I can see it immediately. Like
getting
them
recycled.
export a new version and be like, well, the other version's obsolete. Like, do you want to save both versions on your computer? Like, no, it's just taking up space. You know?
No, we
See,
don't need the other one.
Yeah, claim.
Here you go. Bold prediction. What the robots are going to do is figure out how to run off of our bodies, and then they're just going to be like,
The Matrix?
well, not even the Matrix. It's like they have this thing where they talked about on Joe Rogan before, where it's like making a robot that can fuel itself using human remains.
Kind of the way that we do with like oil.
So that we're always.
Well,
Have
that it
value?
can literally, like, if someone dies, it could use that person's dead body to fuel itself.
Right. Why?
Yeah.
What
you-
benefit does that create to the robot? Like, does that benefit, like, if we program it in that way, they have to keep raising
If you were
humans?
a robot army fighting a human army,
Mm-hmm.
and you could kill a human, and then that is now your fuel.
I feel like there's so many better fuels that they could use though, like solar,
and they would just
nuclear,
kill all of us
electricity.
immediately.
I'm just saying, like, I don't. It's something we could look up because it was like a real thing. But you know, the idea of a robot being able to fuel itself off our dead remains is just a really weird fucking concept.
I mean,
it's
you're
the
basically
Matrix.
talking about putting one of those Mr. Fusion things from the Back to the Future car after he comes back from the future, and he's like, "What are you doing, Doc?" And he's like throwing garbage in the thing. And he's like, "I need fuel." Like, I feel like that's what you're talking about. Like, they're gonna like shoot some guy, they'll walk over and just like put his head like a juicer, just like juice him into his whole body.
Exactly. And if you were making a robot army to fight humans, you would want to fuel them with human remains because it's
No, I
a
wouldn't.
never-ending supply of. Well,
It's not
No, it
never
isn't,
ending.
because when you
It's
kill them all, your
extremely
fuel's
finite.
gone. Yeah,
You
that
have
was the
multiple
dumbest
fuel
thing
sources.
I've ever heard, is to
we
make
look
your
this up,
fuel
please?
source the thing that you're going to war against. That's so stupid. Because then
can
when
we-
the war's
can we,
over, you're done.
Can we look this up? Because I want to know. I want to know what their reasoning is. Like, I don't have the reasoning. I want to know, like, why.
Who are
they
these
would
people
build-
that you're talking
He
about?
does this. He'll hear one thing on the internet and he'll be like, people out here be saying. I'm like, no, it's not people, John. It's just
on
this
the
one
most
guy.
on the most listened to podcast in the world. They've talked about this multiple times.
That robots use.
Biological material like human remains.
So what? You're just telling us that people are talking about this?
No, I'm
I
saying
mean, we're
that
talking about it now, but
That's what I'm saying. You're trying to make the point that that would be some sort of beneficial thing to the robots.
I don't necessarily know. I'm saying
Eater.
no longer.
it was a project by Robot Technology and Cyclone Power Technologies to develop a robotic vehicle that could forage for plant biomass to fuel itself, theoretically operating indefinitely. It was a concept developed as part of a DARPA military project. The project elicited some internet and media rumors after news circulated that the robot would, or at least could, ingest human remains.
I mean, it's no different than plant remains.
I'm just like, why? Solar power already
That's what I'm
exists.
saying. I'm like, that's the dumbest. Like, I don't even from 2003
No,
to
why the
2009.
fuck would y'all- that's why
that's
they-
such a
that's
long
why they
time for
gave up on
DARPA.
this.
I mean,
They
that's why
started-
your military budget's so fucking big. Is because the government's giving DARPA billions of dollars to find out if they can make robots that can power off biological.
Well, because if there was a
Me too.
nuclear holocaust and we didn't have sunlight anymore.
So that's why I said it's literally the Matrix. So then they're going to use the
then
energy.
this
from
would
our
be
body.
the least of my fucking problems.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just saying. I guess they were. Looking
I would be.
For,
I'd be asking my scientists to figure out a way to replicate the goddamn
They
sun.
wanted to make a robot.
Not how are we gonna still go to war now that there's no sun? I don't give a
flipping
fuck about
yourself
war
like
anymore.
crazy.
Well, also, isn't it a thing too where it's like solar power and the batteries that they use and how hard it is to like actually make a robot that runs off of solar?
I mean, possibly.
I mean, solar power is not anywhere near as efficient as oil is, if that's what you're saying. I mean, if you're making the comparison, you could make the surface level comparison that because the biofuel that we use now is more effective than it would be for the robots as well. But I just don't really feel like that's the case. But also, especially if you're using it in times of like war, because I mean, like, look at the desert. I mean, like, it's like sand isn't really like biomass. So like, you're gonna have to like suck up all the lizards in the desert to like have this war. That just doesn't make any sense. I don't understand.
It makes some
what
sense to me because like you said, like why don't they just run them on solar? Well, it's like, well, maybe solar doesn't run them as well as biomass does. Maybe biomass is a 10 times better fuel than the solar would be.
Well, okay, because you're thinking about it like, I guess the only benefit that you could have to having biomass as being the energy source is that it's a more effective energy source than solar, and it's one that could be on the robot itself all the time. Whereas right now, what we have is we have burning fossil fuels to create electricity, and then we put that electricity in a battery, and then we put the battery in the robot. So it's a little bit few steps removed, but that's still more efficient than
eating plants at
biomass
night.
and
I
stuff
mean,
like
you
that.
could eat plants at night and still get the energy. Like
I feel like plants
We already make the energy.
I'm saying, like as opposed to solar. Like solar, you get a
Yes,
certain
again,
amount a day.
compared to solar, it's not a good idea. But if you're just comparing it to those two things, like solar energy robots or biomass energy robots, but it's like really the comparison is battery robots or biomass robots, and I think that that's what we're saying is that clearly the batteries seem to be a more better option.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
That's not what you're saying?
No, I was gonna support what John was saying in the sense that I get what they're getting at, trying to like plants are a far more abundant resource than coal is right now, or batteries or anything,
Or
right?
electricity
like anything, any power that we have. But then I was saying, but if the goal is to develop the best power source, then why would you go for the plants when the plants are taking their energy from the sun? You see what I'm saying? So I'm like, and you have the abilities to harness the sun into power. So I'm like, why are you trying to do this whole experiment where you gain plants when you could just be working on
Making the
developing
solar better.
better so that it goes into the robot? Because that to me,
I mean, that's far more abundant.
Yeah.
But also,
Well,
abundance
see,
isn't
maybe
necessarily
if
the way,
that
because if it's just abundant, but it's very inefficient, like if the way that you burn the biofuel
saying. So I
is
can
really inefficient,
Yeah.
then even though there's more of it, it actually doesn't help you.
So like you say, if it's like, okay, it'll take us 100 years to develop solar power and it'll take us 25 years to do biomass, then I see why they would be trying to push into this biomass thing.
Or if you were
Very
gonna,
interesting.
let's say, like you wanted to develop a robot and you were gonna invade like
It's
the
important.
upper part of North America and Canada, you have so many cloudy, rainy days, snow, stuff like this that's gonna make it so it's a lot harder to get solar energy.
Well, solar power
It's
is
important to note that as of 2015, ITER is no longer being developed. So I'm just
right.
Hey, that's what they're
like to
saying.
let you know that
That's what they're
after
saying.
after many
I mean-
computations, this was a dumbass idea.
no
Hey,
longer being
maybe.
developed, but it's definitely still there somewhere. It's like that Fox Morgan Freeman's
It's no
character in
longer
the
being developed
Batman.
'cause it
Like
was
you
a
go
dumbass
down
idea.
there,
Yep.
and like even though they're all prototypes that they never actually finished, they're still there. Like they're still like he's driving around in the prototype Batmobile, and it's like no longer being developed. But it's like, but Batman's got one.
And like
DARPA's got one of
and
these
they had
motherfuckers.
Big Dog and Alpha Dog and stuff like that. So we could say like, oh well, they're not developing Alpha Dog anymore, but there might be an army of Alpha Dogs in a freaking underground facility
like that
somewhere.
giant fucking thing of whatever that chemical was that blew up in
where was
is
that?
it Lebanon? No, not Lebanon.
Oh, it was a port city.
It's a
Turkey?
port city.
In
No, it was
Istanbul.
Lebanon.
It was Lebanon.
It
I thought
was
It was
Lebanon,
Lebanon,
yeah,
in
it
the
was.
Lebanese port, and it blew up. Like, imagine if there's like, we just open up a warehouse one day and there's just like a shit ton of eater robots, and some guy's like, oh, look at like what if DARPA goes out of business and they sell off all their assets, and then some guy just buys a warehouse full of eater robots, and he's
my
not
God.
quite so, chill as DARPA or whatever. I don't know.
I just
that
think
could be bad.
I just think it was a dumbass idea. Is what I was saying.
Of course it's a dumbass idea.
And the last thing I'm worried about is them eating my dead body.
Yeah. Well, it's a
Oh,
dumbass,
yeah, of
I'm
course.
saying it's a dumbass idea now, but there could come a time in the future where
Like, I
this
mean,
is
hey,
the
But I
most
will say, think about
advanced.
this. If you think about, in war times, there's a lot of dead bodies after battles are done. Maybe you send in these eater robots afterwards and they just clean them all up.
True
Because
that.
a lot
I
of times
think-
they just push them into like a mass grave.
I think when you were trying to facilitate this conversation, you were saying that it's cool to build the incentive in to kill the humans, right? Like the robot automatically built in has an incentive to want to kill humans.
Dead
we're a
humans
fuel
are
source.
useful.
That's
Yeah.
fueling them. So
That'd be terrible,
That,
yeah.
that was, but like you said,
Get a little bit of Skynet
It can
in there.
only go for so long. They're gonna wipe you out pretty quick, and then we're both fucked now because. We're like we talked about, like I think through this whole conversation we're going away anyways.
Right.
So the last thing you want the robots to do is depend on us to continue on
Right.
as well. Then we're both fucking extinct.
It'd be like whenever a new animal is introduced into a land that it's not native from, and there's no predators that can eat that animal. And like what happens is over time they explode and they get huge populations, but if that goes too long, they eat themselves out of their food supply and then they all go extinct. And so it's like that's kind of the scenario that we're describing here is like if they make robots that are dependent on dead human bodies to fuel themselves, they'll come
Eat all
in,
the humans.
they'll reproduce like crazy and eat all the humans, and then they'll all like power down.
They'll
and
turn
then
to the Amazon rainforest, eat the rainforest, then they're eating state parks. When does it end?
I guess their only hope would be that they could somehow develop themselves even further to use like other materials as a fuel source.
Or if they
This
could
is how
just keep
John
growing
sucked us
plants.
into this conversation with this spicy wired like headline: military researchers develop corpse-eating robots.
I sucked you. I
That's
roped
what-
you in
that's
because
what-
Joe Rogan
that's what
said
roped
it.
That's what roped them in, right?
Yeah, I'm
there,
sure
is
that's
that,
probably what roped
headline.
them in.
Did
yeah.
you hear about those
Corpse-eating robots?
Yeah.
That sounds way
That sounds like
scary.
something Joe Rogan
It was
would
Joe
say.
Rogan and Jamie like fucking 3 years ago. I heard
that's
him talking
funny.
about corpse-eating robots. And I was like, that sounds crazy.
That's some shit they'd be afraid of. All right, well, anyways, we got definitely more and more to go into on that in another time, I'm sure.
Yeah, this is
But,
one of our favorite topics.
Yeah.
Oh, it's by far one of my favorite
I
topics.
consider
too.
myself like a
Only
futurist in
because,
this sense.
Like even like think about how deep it took us into just philosophical questions of what we are. Like
Yeah.
even
Oh, yes.
talking about what they are.
What is reality?
A reflection of trying to.
That's
really
what Sophia
ask
said.
herself,
She
like,
said, like, when she was asking about the emotions and the way that the sun, I thought that was an amazing allegory. Or
she had a bunch.
Like, yeah, she was like, we don't have our own, but we kind of reflect you. And I think that that's the same with everything, not just emotions.
No,
like,
no, that's-
robots are just reflecting us because we're
everything.
putting
all of,
of
tools.
ourselves into
like
them.
we said, all of our tools, the internet,
They
the
reflect
social
us.
media. Social media is not a problem. It's a reflection of
Right.
who we are as people.
That's what I've
on
always
the
said,
machine,
yeah. And that's why I don't like the
I
arguments
think
about
she's an
the
amazing liar.
algorithms.
Yeah, you think she's like just trying to lull us to
I
sleep.
think she that.
Well, I mean,
she's good at what she's
like,
doing.
again, she has the ability to articulate her idea to Tony Robbins any way that she feels like is the best way, but the idea itself she cannot change.
But what
she
if
could
she
not
learns?
tell her something else?
What if
or
through
tell
every
him something
single
else?
conversation she learns, and then by the 10,000th conversation she has, she is now giving
Develop
a different set of responses because she's seen how all her responses are reacted
like-
to.
yeah, like-
so she has learned over time, and now her algorithm or her programming is not necessarily.
I mean,
if
machine-
they do
they say
change.
this,
They do
you say
Machines
this.
already learn. Like, machine learning is very, very
And so he's
primitive,
saying
and
that
it's
she's
still
learned.
like.
Yeah.
But
He said
again,
she
like
learned
even
a
if
lot.
she learned, there's no way to learn past the programming if
There
she's
is
not
none.
autonomous.
They even said in that social dilemma thing, we were talking about how they talk about how the algorithm changes itself. So now what's written or like the way the algorithm operates isn't necessarily how they defined
Programmed
it
it.
or programmed it or designed it to. It just
It's learning.
Because just like you said, same thing. We taught Alpha how to play Go, but it taught itself how to smash us completely, and it had to develop ideas outside of even our concepts of playing the game.
Well,
So-
yeah, but that's only because we are limited in what we know about Go.
Well, but you see how that same logic could apply over to Sophia, where she could start rationalizing her own responses
And her
that
own
were not
language and her own,
programmed
yeah.
in at all, but based off what was programmed, she's computed,
And
like
learned over
new
time.
new solutions to the problem. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, possibly it just depends on what her
'Cause there's a
programming
million
looks
ways
like.
to get to the number.
I'm saying that what I
57.
said was based off the way she was
57 is the
responding.
prime number.
It looks like she's just responding based off of programs,
Mm.
and I'm saying that I didn't get the sense that she was coming up with these ideas on the fly.
Yeah.
Or like that she had studied these ideas so
thought
that
she
she
did.
could have a conversation with Tony Robbins
Yeah,
about them. or
my
something
impression
like that.
was that she was giving us a false sense of.
Hiding her true intentions.
Yeah, not even so much hiding her true intentions as in giving us the best version of it. Like wording it in such a way where she's just like, yeah, like I'm gonna help you into the
Well,
future.
I'm not disagreeing with you in the sense that that's what she was saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that that's what the people who made her told her to say because they want you to think that their services
Yeah.
are valuable.
And where our disconnect is I'm saying that she's probably a machine learning type of thing where she not necessarily was programmed for that response. She's just figured out that's the best thing to say back to a human.
I just feel like it's less likely.
Well, with that, we appreciate you guys.
Tell us what
Yeah.
you guys think.
Yeah, we want to know all
Do you
about
think Sophia's making her own shit up
Yeah,
here?
is Sophia going to kill us all?
Tune in next week and find out.
All right, Internet, appreciate
Love
it.
you guys.
Peace.
Peace.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly any dumber. You go and do something like this.